Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TC Podcast. Today I'm joined by Sushou
Hi, that's me.
and Soulfish.
Hello.
Let's start with our newest shiny 5-star. Everyone's favorite IPC agent. Wait, that's the wrong one. There we go. Topaz and Numby, because, well, we can't have short names. Hoyo will not allow us to have short names. Case in point, Donheng Imbibitor Lune.
Don't
What were
forget
they
the star in
thinking?
the middle.
Right, my bad. I forgot the icon. Oops. But yeah, Topaz is our latest 5-star. She is a hunt character, fire type. She is very follow-up attack intensive. Let's go into her traces real quick. Who wants to kick us off?
I suppose I can.
Okay. Why don't you start with her basic attack?
So, Topaz's basic attack is a basic attack. It's basic attack. But it does become important later on.
More than just a basic attack.
I think her talent is probably where the most important information is at. Like her skill and her talent. She has Numby. It's in the name, Topaz and Numby. Little Trotter friend. And the Trotter has its own turn. It functions similarly to Lightning Lord from, Jing Yuan's Lightning Lord. So you'll see him in the turn order. It's going to have a base speed of 80. This doesn't change. It says by default. I don't know why it says by default. It doesn't actually change, but...
It's because there are effects that change it. But
Are there?
yeah,
Numby?
but not on Topaz Kit, but there are effects that can affect it.
Oh, okay. Topaz doesn't have anything that will affect the speed of Numby. And whenever Numby attacks, it is a follow-up attack. And it will also only target the enemy that is affected by a debuff, which is brought on by Topaz's skill. And Topaz's skill is she will throw Numby at someone, quite literally, just yeet the guy, and inflict them with a debuff called Proof of Debt, which is where her debuff comes from. At max level, this ends up being a 50% increase to the damage that enemies take from follow-ups. And that's a lot. And as far as I can tell, this appears to be, in most cases, a separate multiplier. Which makes it incredibly powerful. If an enemy doesn't have Proof of Debt, for whatever reason, either, you start the fight or they just died or whatever, then the next time you end up acting, Proof of Debt will just be randomly assigned to somebody. Proof of Debt also lasts forever. It doesn't have a duration. It is set on the enemy until either they die or Topaz moves it, which is very good. And this will play into one of her big benefits later on as well. Her ultimate will buff Numby. It will essentially put it into an enhanced state. So think kind of like how Clara's ultimate gives her 2 enhanced attacks. Topaz's ultimate will give Numby 2 enhanced attacks. They're still single target. She's a hunt character. That's what that means. So you should be fully expecting only single target damage, but it does get very impressive. It increases the damage multiplier of Numby's attacks by up to 150, an additional 150% at max level. So with her talent being 150 at max as well, you get 300%, which is a lot. And you also get bonus crit damage from it as well, which is also just very nice. It also lessens the conditions for her talent's action advance forward that she can do for Numbi. When allies attack an enemy that is marked by proof of debt with a follow-up attack, Numbi's action gets advanced forward by 50%. So 2 of these, and it's now Numbi's turn again. Numbi himself can't actually trigger this, so you shouldn't be expecting to double dip, but it is still very good, and it's still very, very noticeable. And considering that Topaz's skill counts as a follow-up attack, and with her first bonus ability, her basic attack also counts as a follow-up attack. So no matter what you're doing on Topaz, it's a follow-up attack. So she's always getting to benefit from this. And while Numbi is enhanced by the ultimate, pretty much anything that your allies do is gonna trigger the advance forward. So basic attack, skill, ultimate, doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be a follow-up attack for this either. But again, it's only for those 2 turns, and the ultimate cost is actually kind of steep. Surprisingly so, maybe. It's at 130. So, what ends up happening is that you put your proof of debt debuff onto an enemy. They are now debuffed forever. Congratulations. First step accomplished. Then your skill or your basic attack count as follow-ups. They'll move Numbi forward. Numbi will rollerblade spin on top of them, deal damage. And that's it. You repeat this forever. And any ally that attacks into the proof of debt debuff target will also benefit from the increased follow-up attack damage. And she can get you some really ridiculous numbers with this.
It is important to note that proof of debt cannot be removed, meaning it can't be cleansed. So that is something that you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, there's no way for enemies to remove it besides dying. So
Death.
Death. Her bonus abilities are quite useful. Obviously, the first one I've mentioned already, which is it turns her basic attack into a follow-up attack, which is very nice. Her second bonus ability just increases the amount of damage that Topaz and Numbi deal to enemies with fire weakness, which is very good. And her final one is essentially just an energy refund. So anytime that Numbi attacks while it's enhanced by Topaz's ultimate, Topaz additionally gets 10 energy back. So this will help you get the otherwise fairly high, above average cost ultimate more frequently than you would normally. Yeah, it's also literally called Stunks Market, so...
Oh, you think that's funny? Wait till we get to Gwen.
Her technique, I think, should also be mentioned, just because it is something that's a little bit more unique than other things. Usually techniques are quite boring, but this one is maybe actually worth using. It enhances herself, first and foremost, so she gets energy immediately for attacking after the fight starts. So it's kind of like a mini Jing Yuan ultimate for herself. And when you defeat enemies, after having used this, you apparently also mug them, and you can get bonus credits for doing this. So we've had movement power creep, we've had box breaking power creep, and now we apparently have credit farming power creep. You only get 10,000 extra per day, but hey, honestly, 10,000 per day, that's pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. When you're in credit poverty, you may actually appreciate this. In Simulated Universe as well, it actually can give you additional cosmic fragments and even maybe a curio. So we now also have simulated universe exploration power creep.
We have Lotto power creep. Because there are no negatives, it's just positives. You are just getting things, you are not losing anything.
But yeah, because of her kit is very wordy. This is not anything particularly new. Every time a new unit comes out, it's a goddamn short novel. But it's really just quite simple. You select an enemy to debuff, say, screw you in particular, and then you launch as many follow-up attacks against that enemy as you can so that Numby acts as much as possible and stonks market.
So there are some things to keep in mind with her traces, because if you look at her skill, it says Numby attacks, which in gameplay wise that means actually it will trigger any effects that that Numby attacking does, except for her Eidolons that need Numby's turn to advance. So while her ultimate is active, her skill will also benefit from the ultimate and use a charge of that, for an example.
It can allow you to get essentially back-to-back enhanced attacks if Numby is going to be acting immediately after Topaz anyway.
Yeah. Well, during ultimate, her skill will advance Numby 100% because it's both the follow-up attack and the skill at the same time. Because it does double dip. And the advantage of this is that you can use one-turn buffs like Bronya, and one of the enhanced ones will benefit. But the disadvantage is then you can't advance it as much without using Topaz herself. So it's possible to lose Numby turns.
Yeah, it can get a little bit finicky. This is kind of one of the reasons why playing Topaz on her own can become not bad, just a headache that you would need to actually be paying a lot more attention to than you would otherwise think. I think that's it for her traces. Her minor traces aren't nothing really that unique or anything. She has crit rate and she has fire damage, so she's getting some good benefits out of it.
Yeah, that's something that I want to highlight. All of her minor traces are good. Like, they're all good. You only get 2 HP traces, which is nice. Like, you're getting 10% HP, which helps you stay alive. And then everything else is just damage. Which is, honestly, it's fantastic.
Right. Numby is also not disabled while Topaz is. Or Numby can still act while Topaz is under a crowd control effect, I guess. It's
They're avoiding the Jing Yuan problem.
I guess it kind of makes more sense lore-wise because Jing Yuan is actually the direct controller of Lightning Lord, whereas Numby is an entirely separate entity.
Yeah, but consider.
Yeah, you're right.
Lightning Lord is supposed to be a god tier entity.
Jing Yuan is just EP.
Jing Yuan is a problem. But yeah, let's Soulfish mentioned Eidolons. Let's go over them real quick. Soulfish, why don't you talk about them?
Eidolons? Well, her first few Eidolons are pretty. Her Eidolons in general are actually very straightforward. The first one is worthy, but what it does is it just adds that amount of crit damage based on the number of stacks it has to the attack. So, say if you have 200% crit damage, one stack gives you a total of 225%, and 2 stacks is 250%. It is not multiplicative or anything. It just adds that amount as it lists.
Mm-hmm.
It also note that it resets whenever you switch proof of death to anything else, of course. So it's only single target increase. then her E2, it is extra energy, which is actually notable for allowing her some different rotations, including 3-turn ultimates if you want to spam skill. But note that it only triggers when Nambi takes their own turn, and not when Topaz advances them with their skill, for an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it specifies after Nami takes action, launches an attack.
Yep, not just Nambi attacks, but Nambi takes their action.
Yeah.
E3 is the skill increase is very nice because it scales the vulnerability, but then the basic is just more damage. It's just nice, the increase overall, I suppose.
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. Basic
And
attack is
E4
nice
is-
when you're basic attacking.
E4 is actually pretty interesting because if you look at all the hunt characters, all of them have action advance or a speed modifier somewhere, but Topaz does not until E4, which she makes up for with Nambi advancing itself, but the E4 then lets her get advance too, which means Nambi gets more turns too because you can advance Nambi more often as well. It's a very notable effective speed increase overall, actually, so it's nice to get if you get at this point. Next is the E5, which is talent levels, which is your unconditional damage, and ultimate, which is just your buffed window, and this is basically just more damage and only that.
Yeah, this is buffing up most of her damage. It's pretty good, no questions asked. Then E6.
E6 is pretty massive actually, because increasing the stack count of her ultimate means you can advance Nambi more often, as well as getting more energy back from her A6, which, in addition to the 10% fire penetration, it's just a lot large DPS increase and quality of life as well.
It's a 5-star Z6. I mean,
What
there's
more
not
to
really
say?
much else we can tell you. If you're going for this willingly, or you don't care.
That's the best, right? It's really good if you get it, but I guess you get to see Nambi more often.
Honestly, that's so worth it. Anyone that has a cat will immediately relate to Topaz.
That's a weird looking cat.
True. But hey, we don't judge, okay?
It does appear and disappear as it pleases, so checks out.
She has like 4 cats in her light cone 3. Oh, that's a good segue. Let's talk about her light cones. Let's start with her signature. Worrisome Blissful. And let's see, she has 1, 2, 3 cats. 3 cats. 4 if you count Numby. Okay. Worrisome Blissful. 1 at a time increases the wearer's crit rate by 18% and their follow-up attack's damage by 30%. After the wearer uses a follow-up attack, apply the tamed state to the target, stacking up to 2 stacks. When allies hit enemy targets under the tamed state, every tamed stack increases the crit damage dealt by 12%, so for a maximum of 24%. And this applies to allies, which is fantastic. Like it's just buffing ally damage.
It's also not limited to one target and has no duration, but it can be dispelled, but otherwise it's permanent.
Yep.
There's not really much to say. Only Topaz can currently trigger, or Yanqing too, but only Topaz can reliably trigger the passive, so it's great for
Speak
her.
not his name.
It's not a generic light cone, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Its use is... because of that, its value is kind of potentially diminished a little bit, just because in future it would require another another follow-up character in the on the hunt path to be released for this to actually see any kind of use. And I mean, it's very good for Topaz, but this also doesn't improve her performance to enough of a degree to where, I mean, I don't think that we would be recommending her to be used. I mean, small spoiler for later in the stream, but she's already kind of limited to it be used in follow-up teams. This light cone doesn't remove that limitation. Not really. Maybe at S5, but good luck.
I mean, if you're getting S5 or E6, you are not concerned with the limitations placed upon mortals.
True. It's good, but it's specialist. That's...
Yeah, that's about it.
Let's talk about the other shiny that's currently on rate up. In the Night, Sele's Light Cone. Increases the wearer's crit rate by 18%. While the wearer is in battle, for every 10 speed that exceeds 100, the damage of the wearer's basic attack and skill is increased by 6%, and the crit damage of their ultimate is increased by 12%. This effect can stack up to 6 times. This is more of a generalist light cone than Topaz's. You're realistically not getting like a ton of speed on characters that aren't Sele, but at the same time, this is a hunt light cone, and hunt characters tend to be faster. So you are still getting some value. And this is on every aspect of your kit. So you are getting buffed regardless. If you wanted to make a choice between these two to pull, and you absolutely had to pull one of them, it's probably a better idea to pull In the Night.
Yeah, In the Night is pretty generally usable. Meaning the speed thing is not super hard, at least for like a few of the stacks, just because speed boots exist and hunt characters pretty universally are just speedy, like by default. Even these slower hunt characters have above average speed, if I'm not mistaken.
They also all come with speed buffs.
Yeah.
So there's even more speed there. Like, Yanqing even has a 10% buff there.
Yeah, yeah, even Yanqing. I think he's the slowest hunt character. But even he can be made quite fast. And of course, you can just be like, I mean, Asta exists.
Yep.
If you really just want to be like, I don't want to use brain right now, just pop Asta in the team and be like, oh, profound secrets of the stars, etc., and you'll be fine. The one thing about this for Topaz is that it doesn't actually do anything for her ultimate because her ultimate isn't an attack. So you'll get the other benefits, but you won't get the ultimate crit damage portion because, again, it's not an attack.
And it doesn't buff up follow-up damage, which is most of her damage.
Yeah, this is like you can benefit with the skill quite heavily if you're going to be going for an SP negative type of rotation, especially with what Sol mentioned before about double dipping with the skill in enhanced state and just chucking Numbi at them anyway. That counts as skill damage, even though it's a follow-up as well. So that can actually be pretty okay, but it's a little bit more niche.
Yeah. So this would be better for your account, not necessarily better for your Topaz.
Yeah, because it's just universally good for any hunt character.
Yep. Sleep Like the Dead. He returns. Increases the wearer's crit damage by 30%. When the wearer's basic attack or skill does not result in a crit hit, increases their crit rate by 36% for 1 turn. This effect can only trigger once every 3 turns. It's really just a crit stick.
But it's Good to note that Topaz has a very high chance of triggering it because her skill hits 7 times to 8 times when during ult, so it has a high chance to not crit.
Yeah. And that's something that
The
we will
main
be going
issue
over.
is like
Yep,
it
go
does
on.
have one issue that it's not synced with her normal rotations though, because it doesn't line up with how many turns it takes her to get her ultimate. So you might end up with the buff when you're not really buffing her, I guess.
Hmm. This is one of those, pull out chair, sit down, look at you. So you lost the 75-25. Here's how you cope with that. It's a good stat stick because it's a 5-star. Its stats at max are then they're pretty okay. 582 attack is like pretty good, and you can do some shenanigans with going for like a crit damage body and just kind of lowballing your crit rate so that you can make the most out of the passive effect. But it's fine. We're about to get to a really good option that I think is better, and longtime viewers know what's coming, so
There is something to keep in mind, though, that this is a standard 5-star, which means you can potentially get multiple copies of it. So, Now, am I saying you should be superimposing it? Probably not, but it is an option to consider. Something to keep in mind. Now, realistically, if you don't have a 5-star gacha exclusive, there is the favorite child, Cruising in the Stellar Sea. Everyone knows this one, you probably already have it, even if not S5. Increases the wearer's crit rate by 16%, and increases their crit rate against enemies with HP less than or equal to 50% by an extra 16%. When the wearer defeats an enemy, their attack is increased by 40% for 2 turns. Now, Soulfish mentioned that Topaz has a lot of hits in her kit, which means she can benefit greatly from stuff like this on every hit. The thing to keep in mind is that because she is a hunt character and she is purely single target, it might be a little difficult getting the attack percent increase. That being said, you are still getting a lot of crit rate. Not much to say here, really, unless you guys want to add something.
I guess the only thing I would say is that this is actually maybe a little bit easier for Topaz to not waste compared to other hunt characters, because depending on the character and depending on how quickly you're getting things below 50%, you overcapping on crit is a thing that can happen, especially with other buffs in the mix. But because Gwen? Later, my brain is a little crossed right now. Because Topaz is likely to be using Salsotto as a follow-up character, and because Salsotto, as the planar set, buffs the follow-up attacks, its activation criteria is only 50%. So while you could go for more, having this on top is going to be really good because you're not going to be risking it overcapping compared to if you were a Rutland user. So, and it's easy to get. Like, everyone has it, and everyone is eventually going to get S5 for it.
Indeed. Now. This is the part that everyone's been waiting for. You know how I said Cruising in the Stellar Sea was the favorite child? You know the favorite meme where you say, I love you both equally, and then you whisper to the other, you're my real favorite? That's the case with swordplay. Who wants to talk about swordplay? I can sense Sushou buzzing with excitement over there.
Hey, I don't mind giving the floor. It's it's swordplay. Swordplay is the favorite child, and by a lot. It's it's just so good. It's just so damn good. It's unreasonably good for what it is.
Yeah, go on, Soulfish.
And especially since, as mentioned, the multi-hits, because this one stacks after each hit, which means their final 2 hits will be fully buffed by this light cone, while other hunts have only up to 4 hits per attack, so if they switch a target, none of their final hits will ever be fully buffed, but Topaz will. So that's even more reason to use it on her if you don't have other options.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
just so good.
yeah. And at S5, this is probably this is arguably competing with her 5-star options at S5. I'm not entirely sure about the breakdowns for other impositions.
I mean, even at S1, it's already an incredibly good option. Good enough to where you would probably be. You should probably consider whether or not you need her signature light cone, because yeah, like Sol mentioned, you stack it instantly with a single Numbi attack or with your skill. It's immediately at max. Even if you switch targets, it's going to stack up immediately again. And at S5, this is an 80% damage buff. 80%. You get Sally's Resurgence. That's what that is. That's ridiculous. And you just have that forever, permanently, basically. It's swordplay.
What else is there to say?
This and Genius of Brilliant Stars are the 2 biggest mistakes of this game.
Bennett moment. Oh yeah. Enough fangirling over swordplay. It's good if you have it. You might want to use it.
Just maybe.
Yeah. But obviously swordplay is gacha exclusive, so not necessarily everyone's going to have it. It took me hundreds of pulls before I got my very first copy. So we can't really be recommending that. For free-to-play options, again, Cruising in the Stellar Sea, S5, just fantastic. But yeah, if you have gacha exclusives, then you can consider another option. But it is not necessary. Let's talk about Return to Darkness real quick, the BP light cone for Hunt. Just to, again, quick addition. Like Soulfish mentioned earlier, with the multi-hits, Topaz can make use of certain light cone passives a lot more easily compared to other characters. And this applies to Return to Darkness as well, because it applies after a crit hit, and if you have multiple hits inside of an attack, this makes it easier to proc the Dispel. It is more niche, the Dispel is more niche, but it is something to keep in mind, because this is also a crit rate light cone, and it is a good option for 4 stars. High base attack, highest base attack out of the 4 stars. Good crit rate. The Dispel can be very handy sometimes. The only downside is that this is a Battle Pass exclusive, and that means you, 1, have to spend money on it, and 2, it competes with Peaceful Day, which is just the second best option for Erudition light cones in general. So that is a consideration that you have to keep in mind. Other options, we have the 2 other gacha exclusive 4 stars, Only Silence Remains. I mean, you are a hunt character, so you ideally want to be up against low count enemies, or low enemy count content. So you will be getting attack unconditionally, and if you have 2 or less enemies on the field, you're getting crit rate, which is fantastic. Subscribe for more. It's not fantastic. It buffs basic and skill damage, but that's really it. And like we said, Topaz is just very follow-up intensive. It doesn't really do much for her on that regard. And then River Flows in Spring. No, I hate it. I personally hate this Lycone. I hate this Lycone. I don't like it.
Yeah, these other options, they're just kind of inferior to the stuff we'd already mentioned. And seeing how cruising is readily available, it's a different issue if you're running into a thing that we discussed with the destruction limited characters in the previous streams, where their equivalent on the Fall of an Eon is highly contested, and cruising in the Stellar Sea is much the same. Lots of characters want it because it's just naturally very good, and it's a very accessible light cone. You may have somebody who's already using cruising in the Stellar Sea, and so you can't afford to just switch it off, and you don't have swordplay, for example. Then yeah, I guess River Flows in Spring is probably the thing that you're going to be sitting on until you have something better. But its passive is it's especially punishing for Topaz because this only returns at the start of Topaz's next turn. If Numby is attacking, between that and you're just not getting this passive benefit at all, you have literally just a stat stick light cone without a passive. It would be the equivalent of using an off-path light cone, and that's just not good. Accessible hunt light cones besides cruising in the Stellar Sea are not good. It's kind of dismal. We joked about it for destruction light cones, but hunt light cones are just oof.
Yeah. For context, we keep saying that that destruction characters are balanced around their light cone options, and that is true. Because they are a lot more selective in their application and in their effects. Hunt, on the other hand, is fairly straightforward, but the problem with that becomes versatility. You have cruising, which is great, but you don't really have much outside of that for free to play. Like the gacha exclusives and the pay, like basically what you have to work hard for and just swipe for is really good, but the trade-off is that you don't have good free-to-play options most of the time. Like, if you're running 2 hunt characters, which is becoming realistic, right? Like, if you're running Topaz on one side and, like, Celia on the other side, you are going to be split between cruising and figuring out any other option for you. Because you can only get one cruising. You can only get one light cone copy from Herta. So, it is
Stupid,
something.
by the way.
Yeah, it's stupid, but it is a balancing decision that I can understand. Especially as we get more options down the line.
Yeah, true. We might get more path light cones as well. The other thing is that unlike destruction, which actually has not terrible 3-star options in specific situations, there's basically no redeeming features of any of the 3-star hunt light cones. They all have very unfavorable activation criteria, and their base stats are also too punishing, too low to be like good. I mean, Arrows, for example, has 317 attack at level 80. Like, that's miserable. And considering that hunt characters typically like their multipliers to be high, and therefore like their attack to be high, that is absolutely going to be too much for you to do anything with. So 3-star light cones for hunt is like, just take the L, use river flows in spring. Don't even... there is no reason you should ever be using a 3-star hunt light cone.
At the very least, River Flows in Spring is something that you can S5 and it'll be somewhat useful. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's much else to add there. We covered literally all of her light cone options. So let's hop into her relics real quick. Planars, this is the easiest. Just Solsado. Follow-up's good. She follow-ups. Follow-up good. Now, if you're playing a more hyper carry-esque Topaz, then you can consider Rutilant Arena, but like, just go Solsado. What are you doing? We'll talk about hyper carry and team options in a minute, but just go Solsado. Space Ceiling, we will cover why, but it's very loosely an early option until you have Solsado.
Well, if you farmed World 7 a lot, like, Rutilant Arena is actually not the worst option you can use on her. Because, as we've said before, attack buffs are very common. It will, in some cases, actually outperform Space Healing. So, if you have it, you can use it.
And there is another thing about Space Ceiling that we will get to in a minute. But, yeah. Solsado, and if you don't have Solsado, Arena. At this point, I think a lot of people have Arena pieces lying around because, Rutilant Arena Broken Keel. Absolutely ridiculous combo there. But yeah. Relics. So why don't you talk about her relics real quick?
Sure. So, the first thing that people would probably think would be 4-piece Firesmith, but it's how do I put this nicely?
It's garbage.
It's worse than 2-piece fire, 2-piece attack, so it's like her maybe third best option on a good day.
On a good day. Those good days don't come.
So the go-to baseline option then is actually 4-piece Genius, because that actually outperforms the others, especially if you add defense reduction. So, yeah, we're back to Quantum again.
We never left.
There is no escape.
It's just Genius every single time.
Wait, it's all Genius?
You can go... Always has been. Because following that then comes the strongest non-generic option, which is 2-piece Firesmith, 2-piece attack. And well, after that, then you can consider Firesmith. But at that point, you should just go for whatever 2-piece combinations have the best substats. So...
Yeah,
this is the state of Firesmith.
Please
if you've ever been in doubt about how bad Firesmith is.
Yes, it is primarily because of the defense ignore, how it scales, and the fact that 4-piece Firesmith just doesn't really do anything.
Guys, it's 12% fire damage. It's 12% fire damage. You get that from traces. That's not a 4-piece effect. This is just... And it's after unleashing an ultimate, so it's not like you have good uptime on it in the first place.
No.
Like, it's just...
Zagagos, they do nothing.
It's just not... It's not worth it. And it's for one attack as well. Like... It's just not worth it. Like if this were like after unleashing ultimate for the next 3 turns or whatever, fine, maybe. Like maybe we can consider it, but like this is just not good. Please spare yourself. Like the only reason you'll ever have that many Firesmith pieces lying around is if you have like Welt or Imbibitor and you're farming Wastelander for them. And even for Imbibitor, just go Genius.
Just use Genius. This happens every time we talk about relics. Somehow, just use Genius. It's a better cavern to farm because it shares it with Guard of Withering Snow, which is hella based for pretty much any supports that you want to not die. Has niche uses on even certain damage dealing characters, depending on how you want to go. The 2-piece set is just like amazing, 8% damage reduction. You can't lose in that cavern. Anything you get is gonna be good, and it's gonna be useful because you can put them on everyone. Firesmith can't be put on anyone. I mean, it can, but please don't.
Hook does exist, but
Who?
exactly.
Just go Genius or 2-piece fire, 2-piece attack. Don't torture yourself. Yeah. So Sato and Genius / 2-piece. It's pretty much all you need to know. Now, I think that's all of it. Let's talk about her teams. Let's start with the Nihility debuffers. You know, the classic. Silverwolf. Silverwolf is great because a hunt character, single target. Not really much else to say there. The other thing is the potential fire implant that Silverwolf could be bringing would help get her A4 more consistent. Like if you're fighting something that isn't naturally fire weak, you bring Silverwolf, she implants fire, you do more damage. TLDR. Pela, I mean AoE defense shred, like it's nice, it's good. But again, she's a hunt character, she's gonna do single target damage. It's not really much of a concern. They're both pretty SP friendly, so it isn't a concern bringing either of them. Sushou, why don't you?
Pela's...
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, go on, yeah.
No, go on. I was gonna move on from Pela, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, Pela's defense shred is AoE and is therefore slightly weaker than Silverwolf's, but because you're quite likely to be using Topaz with another follow-up character, who often have AoE follow-up attacks, they can end up also benefiting quite a lot from having all enemies defense shred, especially because there's likely to be, weaker adds on the sides who can just die and make it easier to focus fire the remaining enemies who are likely to be stronger. So Pela does actually work pretty well in those specific situations.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about those follow-up characters in a moment, but let's talk about our latest shiny real quick. Just pairing her with Topaz. We'll go over the rest of her later.
Yes, the quick rundown is that Gwen can fill a similar role to Pela, where she can debuff all the enemies on the field. Her debuff is permanent, and it's weaker than having the defense shred because it's the damage vulnerability, but Guinaifen's ability to keep the debuff permanently up means that she can also be quite SP efficient, and that can leave a lot more SP for the other two members of your team who could kind of just throw caution to the wind at that point. And also, Guinaifen also has quite a significant amount of personal damage as well. So that can be an extra source of damage. They're both fire as well, so just tacking on even more fire damage, especially if you have fire weak enemies, that you're going to be breaking them very, very quickly with the two of them together.
Fire good.
Fire good.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the debuffers. Harmony. The immediate option is Asta, for obvious reasons. Again, like Sushou said, fire break, always fire break good. She also provides a metric ton of attack from her what was it? Her talent. It's a stupid amount of attack, and it is fairly easy to keep up 5 stacks with her. She also gives you the just permanent fire damage to all allies, which is fantastic for Topaz. Sol, why don't you talk about her ultimate and just speed with Topaz real quick?
I mean, like, us the speed with Topaz?
Yeah.
Well, as you know, speed buffs do not directly buff Nambi, so you're only buffing Topaz, though this does indirectly increase Nambi speed by allowing you more chances to advance Nambi, but while speed is great on her, it's actually not as valuable as on other hunt characters because of this, that you can't actually advance Nambi. But overall, you're still getting a lot of value out of everything she gives, because the speed also means you can just ignore building speed on her for the most part.
And the other thing is, the speed can potentially negatively interact with certain other characters. It can interact positively with them, so it will depend on the team that you're running. If you are running Asta with Topaz, you can run Planetary Rendezvous for even more fire damage for free. You can run Meshing Cogs. Everyone loves Cogs. You can run Memories of the Past. You have a lot of options for Asta. That being said, Planetary Rendezvous is specifically for Asta. You can't really run it with any of the other harmonies. Bronya. Always Bronya. There is never a DPS discussion that does not involve Bronya. Sushou, why don't you take this? Same.
Well, we always have to mention Bronya because it's the law. If you're playing Topaz with another follow-up character, depending on who that follow-up character is, Bronya can be a pretty good choice, and Bronya is likely to be buffing that other character so that they have more follow-up attacks to benefit more from Topaz's debuff. If you're trying to use Topaz by herself, and Bronya is being used on Topaz, then this will significantly increase the number of times that she can advance forward Nambi, which means you get to use Topaz's skill more, which is more damage, which then advances Nambi forward, which is even more damage, and it kind of just loops into itself. The issue is that this is very, very SP negative at this point, and the kind of obvious question arises of, is this the most efficient use of my Bronya in the context of things like Memory of Chaos, where there are 2 teams necessary? Is using Bronya to buff your Topaz and try to turn her into a hyper carry the best use of your Bronya? Probably not. But it is something you can do if you're really adamant about doing it. it's Bronya. She's there. She's good. She's great. If you want to use her, you can do that. But there are probably characters who benefit more from what Bronya can provide them, especially because Numby is not going to be benefiting from the damage buff from Bronya's skill. It's going to go away, and that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Lightning Lord situation where it's hard to buff or impossible to buff it without E6 Bronya with Bronya's skill.
Yeah, you already have better options available in like the free to play cast, I feel. So it is your choice. It can be good, but know that it will never be the best.
Yeah, like
Unless you have E6 Bronya. But if you have E6 Bronya, you don't need us to tell you anything.
if you have E6 Bronya, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Well, if you have E6 Bronya, she also has a follow-up attack.
Oh, okay, true. Bronya's E4 does give her a follow-up attack, so you can big brain it at that point. But for mere mortals who only have E0 Bronya, there are better choices.
For sure.
Like Asta.
Like Asta.
Bronya is still great with her. It's just the large
Relative
portion of her
value.
damage just can't benefit consistently. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of relative value. Like you're realistically going to find more value using Bronya on your other side than with Topaz.
100%.
Especially once we start talking about like her actual team setups. Yeah. Tingyun, I mean, Tingyun is Tingyun. She's gonna let you ult more. She's SP positive. She gives you an attack buff. Like, there's not really much to say. She's just good. Being able to ult more with Topaz just means you're doing more damage. She's just good. Yukong is literally the same discussion whenever Yukong pops up. Speed tuning and actually reliably buffing your damage dealers. It's a bit more interesting with Topaz because of the various interactions there with Nummy and the advance forward and all that. Who wants to talk about Yukong real quick?
I probably use Yukong the most. My Yukong is not E6. And it must be said that Yukong at E6 is significantly easier to use. Not necessarily straight better. She just does what she wants to do with less difficulty. And Yukong kind of has a similar issue to Bronya in this particular setup, where it's very difficult to utilize her to the fullest, especially because of the way that Numby interacts. It's the same. It's the Lightning Lord issue of making full use of Yukong's roaring bowstrings is, I would say, borderline impossible to do consistently without Yukong being at E6 as well. And even when Yukong is at E6, you might still not be able to do it properly, or you'll only maybe get like one attack out of it that is actually fully buffed. And that just it's not worth bringing Yukong just for that one attack out of like 10 that actually lines up perfectly with what the enemy is doing, with what you're doing. For a character who is already quite the headache to play normally in regular teams where you don't have a summoned entity to keep track of as well, like, save yourself the trouble. I would say you would need a PhD to even begin unraveling the way to make this work efficiently. Some of us have that, and we don't know.
Yeah, I think that pretty much just covers Harmony. Okay, so we talked about pairing Topaz with other follow-up characters. Now, we have 3 of them. We have Himeko, we have Jing Yuan, and we have Clara. Let's talk about Jing Yuan real quick because he's the other gacha exclusive 5-star. Who wants to... Soulfish, why don't you talk about Jing Yuan?
Well, the issue is he doesn't follow up often enough to be a good synergy. So while Topaz can buff Lightning Lord's damage, it will only apply the debuff to one target, which means you're around like half his damage at least won't be buffed by it. So they don't synergize particularly well because of this. It's mostly a novelty if you want to like have large screenshots, but otherwise there's no synergy there really.
Yeah, it can kind of, it can work, especially because something that we mentioned earlier of, like, Lightning Lord's damage is AoE. If Lightning Lord kills off the small fry relatively quickly, then you end up being able to benefit much more from the debuff. The other issue, and like, it is a really, really strong debuff, and Lightning Lord's damage will go up considerably because of this. But Jing Yuan's other thing is that his teams have kind of already been solved. He knows exactly what he wants, and what he wants is Tingyun and Asta specifically, because he wants to be fast and he wants to have his ultimate frequently, and that doesn't leave room for Topaz really.
Topaz is if you want one screenshot but don't care when it happens, I guess.
It's a slightly lazier way of going about it, I think, as well, since proof of debt doesn't expire, so you don't really need to pay too much attention to it. It's just Topaz would be occupying one of the 2 aforementioned support character slots, so you're losing either Asta or Tingyun, which, I mean, yeah, sure, you can send those to the other side, and that could be pretty good as well, but just be aware that you're not necessarily improving the team's damage overall. It's more like you're sidestepping into the same thing, but slightly different, Don't expect to don't expect Jing Yuan teams to suddenly skyrocket into the stratosphere just because of Topaz. It's more like it's same but different,
Yep, okay. I think that's it. Let's go over Himeko, the other 5-star follow-up character. This one was a very reoccurring question before. Topaz Himeko. I think it is similar, or not as bad as Jing Yuan, but similar to what Soulfish was saying. She doesn't follow up that frequently because it is relegated to break, and that is inherently not consistent unless you're dealing with like mobs, but at that point you don't really care what you're doing. You're just gonna kill everything anyway. And the other thing is that Himeko's damage is concentrated in her skill. Her skill is about 60% of her damage generally. So
it's more of a novelty, I feel. I think in certain situations it can be pretty good. especially if there are a lot of fire weak foes. If it's, if you're getting the increased breaking from Topaz and Numbi as well, because Numbi is a summoned entity, that does also factor into providing more toughness damage. Then you could break fairly frequently to actually proc Himeko's talent. The issue is it's the same thing as Lightning Lord, but arguably worse, where only one enemy is ever going to be debuffed by Proof of Debt, and whereas Lightning Lord consists of lots of targeted blast AoEs, this one is just full AoE the whole way, and it doesn't do anywhere near as many hits. So it's not going to be. It's not even going to be as noticeable. You're not even going to necessarily get the big screenshot numbers with this. Niche, kind of fun, possibly good in certain situations, but outside of that, it's not really. It shouldn't really be like a huge consideration.
Okay, let's go over the last 5-star, and then we can answer some of the question marks in the chat real quick. Clara. I think Clara is just the best example for follow-up for Topaz, but that also introduces some issues inside of teams. So if you play Clara, if you're familiar with Clara, you'd know that she really likes having Tingyun, Pela, and then certain sustain options, primarily links. That's basically Clara's favorite team at the moment. Now, if you want to pair Topaz with Clara, you are going to have to remove someone from that slot. Now, the question is, who do you remove? Soulfish, why don't you run us through this a little bit?
Who to remove? Well,
yeah, like how would you structure a Topaz Clara team, and is it worth it?
You usually actually have to keep Tingyun because Clara ultimate uptime is really important if you want her to do enough follow-up attacks to actually trigger the synergy between them. Clara has one primary advantage in that her flash attack counter can trigger it even if the target that attacked you was not the marked one. So she can potentially advance Nambi up to 3 times per ultimate cycle, I guess, or turn cycle. 2 from ultimate splashes and 1 from the market target attacking you, for an example. While, say, March can only do this once because, as we've said, the mark is only on one target. And because of this, ultimate uptime is extremely important, so Tingyun is often the ideal choice then to pair to keep, I suppose.
You essentially end up trading one debuff for another, and depending on the situation, it can be better or worse. It's again like a question of what enemy do you need to get rid of faster? Do you need to cull the whole herd, or do you just want to tell this one boss or elite to, where they can stick it?
Yep, that sounds about right. Topaz can let you help. Like, say an elite, Topaz might be better for clearing that, while it has 2 small adds. Well, multiple elites, Payloff would end up better because Clara takes care of them then.
Especially if there's elites that constantly resummon ads, then that's something that is also working against Topaz, because you just have more chaff to go through, and it ends up kind of being maybe not as good. I guess the other thing we should mention is that Topaz is actually contributing quite significant damage of her own, so that could offset the fact that the debuff is maybe not as good as the defense shred, for example. But again, it's the same thing. It's the biggest limiting factor Topaz has. It's only single target, and you have to be prepared for the situation arising where you need to start micromanaging who you're attacking, and especially in like a duo elite situation, that's not a fun one to be in. I think that's it for Clara.
I think so. So there were a couple of other questions about other follow-ups, E4 Qingchui, and this is a common misconception. E4 Qingchui is not something you play around. It is something that it's a nice bonus when it happens, but it's not something that you go specifically out of your way to get, especially because it is a low chance of happening. So you shouldn't be pairing Topaz and Qingchui specifically for that, especially because again, Qingchui, like, she does not reliably and consistently follow up, and she's also fairly SP intensive on her own, which means that realistically Topaz is not going to get a lot of opportunities to use skill. The other one was Blade, and like I don't even know how to go about answering this one. Just
In a dream scenario, it could work.
yeah, in a dream scenario. Honestly, you know what? I'm just gonna run Jinglu, Blade, Topaz, and just follow up every 5 seconds with it. Someone should tell Reens to do that because she has an E6 Blade. Just run those 3 together and just spam Blade follow-ups.
It's
Speaking of Cellrun hunters, KAFKA does have or she has been mentioned a lot with Topaz too, actually. Because she has an easy to trigger follow-up, but that does not really end up in a proper synergy.
Yeah.
Which yeah.
Please
reading
don't.
challenge parenthesis impossible. Kafka's talent is there to apply shock to the enemy. It's not there to actually deal damage. If you show me anyone whose Kafka has a talent above level 2, and I'll show you someone who has wasted their resources on something that doesn't matter.
42%. We are going back to the entire reason why red text exists.
This is why red text exists.
Guys, her multipliers are not there. They're not there.
It's still a follow-up, but it's you might as well use Clara if you have her, or just March.
Yeah.
It's
or both, Clara March.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
You have no buffers left.
Yeah.
That's fine. You'll manage.
The thing with March's follow-up is that since you're not using her in the capacity of somebody who's going to be dealing damage with the follow-up attack, it's there purely to advance Numby. And it can do it very, very consistently. That's kind of the benefit of March in that situation. Whereas KAFKA, you're bringing to actually deal the damage as well, and at that point it's why is Topaz here? Why is insert one or the other here?
But yeah, so realistically, just it's Clara, maybe Himeko, not Jing Yuan.
I'd say you can do Jing Yuan. It's just it's lesser compared to the other two, and it's not necessarily better than the existing teams for Jing Yuan. So
It's
I mean,
a
I
lot
could
more
see
limit.
it
Yeah.
if like you really like both Topaz and Jing Yuan, but you can't fit either of them on the other side because you have other characters that you really like over there.
yeah,
But it's definitely not like a recommendation.
I mean maybe it'll change at some point, but if it does, we'll let you know.
Yeah. If it does, we'll be right here talking about it. We are professional talker abouts. Yan Ching?
Mods, incinerate this man.
Drew, I am banning you from the chat. Is there anything else about Topaz that we haven't covered? Ah, right. Stats for her relics. Where is she? Hunt. So, crit, body, fire, sphere, attack, rope, and for boots, this is where it gets interesting. Because because a lot of her damage comes in from Nami, and he isn't really affected by her speed. Attack percent boots end up being really good. But again, there is some argument to be made for speed boots. So you wanted to say something?
It's basically what you said, because speed doesn't directly lead to Numbi attacks as much. It does some because her actions advance Numbi too, but that's why attack boots often are just better than speed on her.
Mm. So yeah, attack percent boots most of the time, all the time, really.
Yeah. Outside of maybe like very, very, very fringe situations where you need the speed, but I can count those on like a finger.
Like the other thing to take into consideration is that like we already talked about Asta, but like if you need speed on your Topaz, realistically you can just get that from Asta's ultimate, and still keep the attack percent boots for just a ridiculous amount of attack percent, because you're not going to need more speed than that. Like you're not going to need both speed boots and Asta's ultimate. And like again, Asta is one of Topaz's best synergies. She's arguably her best harmony. So if you're realistically running those two together, so you don't need to worry about speed boots. Just run attack.
Yeah.
If you want more speed on her, run Clara, I guess.
Slowest team in the goddamn game, and it'll still probably kill everything.
Yeah. Since this is also a common question that people tend to ask, E1 versus S1. Who wants to do this one? Sushou, do you wanna?
Sure. I mean, they are both good options if you are definitely going to do at least one of them. Topaz's E1 has, as Sol described before, is quite good. Having them take additional crit damage from follow-up attacks is very nice, especially because it also lasts forever, if I'm not mistaken. This kind of just plays into what she's already doing, where it's like, yeah, if you have her with another follow-up attacker, and for her own follow-up attacks, you're suddenly going to be doing a lot more damage, and it's a lot more free damage. Does it fundamentally change anything about her? Not really. Does it change her teams? Not really. Does it allow her to be used outside of those teams for non-follow-up characters? Also not really. Her signature light cone is, well, it's kind of the same thing. It doesn't really shift the needle too much, and it's only really usable by her. It's a very good option for if you don't have any other hunt light cones, and honestly, that could very well be one of the biggest limiting factors for people who do go for Topaz is I just don't have a light cone to give her. Then that could be a good reason for you to want to go for her signature light cone. It is unlikely, at least at this point in time, for other hunt characters to find good enough use out of this light cone, mostly because the only other hunt character with a follow-up attack is Yenching, and it's not very frequent or reliable. So this would be a light cone that is, if you're somebody who is concerned about future value and long-term value, this might not be something that you would want to go for specifically because of that. So
I guess it's important to know that this debuff does apply to all crit damage, not just follow-ups, and it also can be applied to multiple targets at once.
And it is permanent.
Though it can be cleansed.
But realistically, like
Realistically, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like not because their teams are still going to want follow-up attacks. It applying to everything doesn't actually change too much. So overall, they're pretty similar in value, actually.
I would suggest S1 over E1 because, like, if you have to get one or the other, right? Like, if you really like Topaz and you want one or the other, I would suggest S1 because, like, personally, I think having stats is better. Like, you're getting 18% crit rate, you're getting the follow-up damage, and you're getting a debuff that applies to, that can potentially apply to every enemy on the field, doesn't fall off, and buffs all of the damage that is applied to it, right? Like all of the crit damage that's applied to it. So I think it has more value, is more generalist, and just realistically more usable than her E1. Like on paper they might be close enough, but realistically I would go with S1 over E1.
I would generally say that is the case, yeah. It's also, on average, easier to get because of the fit system.
True. If you lose the 50-50 trying to go for the E1, you're going to be very sad, likely.
And yeah, it is more flexible. Overall, stat value for Topaz herself is higher on the light cone too, so...
And, like, we do talk about the effects being more niche and, like, focused on Topaz, but there are two things to consider. One, you are still getting a bunch of crit rate and really high attack, like base attack, so it is still a usable crit stick. And the other thing is, like, again, we talk about this, you realistically don't have too many hunt option, like light cone options if you're a free to play, or if you're just very unlucky. So if you have cruising in the Stellar Sea and you have two hunt characters that you want to run, you're going to put cruising on one of them, and you're going to need another option. This is still better than not having. This is still better than like the other free to play options that you could run, right? It's still better than River, Flows, and Spring. It's better than the 3 stars. So it is definitely something that you can find value in. And there's always the argument of like future follow-up hunt characters, which I personally think are going to be infrequent because like just think about like follow-up doesn't really seem to be like a hunt thing, and we already have one, so I don't expect us to get like a ton of them. But again, that's like 100% like speculation, so Hoyo could wake up tomorrow and prove me wrong. We could get like 5 hunt characters in a row that are follow-up.
Even
Like-
at bare minimum, this is a good stat stick, and you get 18% crit rate. So
Yeah.
and you can put it on anyone. So
So at the end of the day, like I'd say S1 over E1, and I think we all agree on that. Okay. I think that's all of it for Topaz. I don't think there's anything else that we're missing out on. We'll do the Q&A after the stream, after the podcast ends. But for now, let's talk about our 4-star, our other fire character. There's a lot of fire this patch. Okay, where is she? Guinaifen. Guinevere. Gwen. Gwen is the most recent addition to the Nihility cast. She is a 4-star fire type. She applies burns through her kit. She applies debuffs, because of course she would, she's Nihility. And like Sushou mentioned earlier, she fills a similar niche to Pela, but let's talk about her. Let's talk about her real quick. Soulfish, why don't you give us her kit rundown?
Sure. So, the first thing you would probably look at is her talent, because that is where her buff comes from. It also has some interesting name, but it it applies a debuff to, or attempts that apply a debuff to enemies affected by, or when they take burn damage, which is just a straight up vulnerability debuff, and this stacks up to 3 times, which at talent level 10 is 7% per stack for 21, so 21% increased damage taken, which is basically permanent because it lasts 3 times and is refreshed every time you apply it again. This is probably her main like support value and one of the reasons you're looking at her. After that, it would be her skill, which is the main way she applies burn. It just does a small amount of blast damage and then applies a burn to the target's hit. This burn is pretty standard. It does decent scaling actually, but it's not like hugely noticeable. Then you have her ultimate, which is it's like a mini KAFKA ultimate, except it only works on burn. Does some damage, then triggers all burn statuses on the enemies for some extra damage. And her basic attack is just the basic attack. There's not much to say there. Though, when you look at her bonus traces, then the basic attack does gain an ability to apply the burn, though the base rate is not the highest on it, being an 80% versus a skill 100%. But this means that she can spam basic and still keep her burn up, so lets her be SP positive, basically. Her A4 is... it's brightly one whack on a stick. It's not hugely notable. Applies once that every battle, makes her act a bit faster, I guess. And her A6 is just... it's just a nice damage increase. It's basically always going to be active because you're always going to have enemies burned. And that's mostly her base kit.
You said that her ultimate immediately triggers all burn effects. Now, is she similar to Sampo other DOT characters, where you can apply multiple sources of burn, like multiple different burns?
Yes, they will always trigger every single source of burn on the target, regardless of who applied it.
Fantastic. So that would be break, and it would be her personal burns, right? Somewhat similar
Yeah.
to Serval with her shock.
Yep.
Okay. So that's pretty nice. Now the immediate follow-up to that would be break effect. Is there any value in building break effect on Gwen?
So fire break is the opposite of lightning break, basically. You can opt to build some but her ultimate triggers dots again. But fire has the weakest actual burn, I guess, dots that is applied from the break, while having the highest actual straight up break damage. So it can be a good stat, but it's not like something you want to force on her, basically.
So if you have some break effect, that's fine, but don't go out of your way for it, because fire break is more upfront than DOT. Like
Yeah, so
it does more upfront than it does in DOT.
Yeah, it does not synergize as well with her ultimate as, say, KAFKA does with Lightning Break.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so because she is DOT based, she is going to be akin to the other DOT characters, where you want to build attack percent and not crit, as the red text says. Was that correct?
Yeah, because her burn can't crit, and that means the majority of damage can't crit.
So, do not build crit on Gwen. If you build crit on Gwen, I will find you. Okay, so because she is a DOT character and because she applies debuffs, effect hit rate. How much effect hit rate does she realistically need? Because as we can see here, she gets some from her traces, right? Like her mini traces. She gets 10. She gets 10%. And because she is a Nihility character, she does have access to a very nice light cone that could actually just be her best option, right? Eyes of the Prey, it gives you a bunch of effect hit rate and increases your DOT damage. Both things that she really likes. So how much effect hit rate does she actually need in total?
Well, it's the kind of standard thing of who are you going to be going up against, and do you want to make sure that there is a guaranteed chance of getting that? Usually, in sort of late stage Memory of Chaos, enemies have a fair bit of effect resistance. So for things that have effects that have a 100% base chance, usually it's in the ballpark of about 67% effect hit rate to guarantee that status to be applied to like everyone, pretty much. Well, not pretty much, just to everyone. And 67% it's not unreasonably high, but it is something that is maybe challenging to get without relying on a light cone that gives it to you, or without relying on a main stat chest piece that has effect hit rate. It's probably a better idea to just focus on making sure that Gwen's skill applies its burn consistently, because the basic attack with the first bonus ability has an 80% base chance of applying the same burn as the skill. And if you want to make that guaranteed, you're going to need a lot more effect hit rate, and that starts to creep into the unreasonable territory, because at that point you will really start noticing the attack percent that you're likely to be sacrificing to get that effect hit rate. So, with that sort of 67% in mind, using a light cone like Eyes of the Prey is going to significantly reduce the amount of effect hit rate that you need to achieve from your relics, which makes building her significantly easier. And the dot damage increase that you get from Eyes of the Prey as well just makes everything even better, because Gwen's main source of damage is her damage over time. And with her skill at max level, 218% as a damage over time is very impressive for a character that's technically a support. Because she also has the increased damage from her final bonus ability, and because she applies a damage vulnerability to enemies through just her talent anyway, she can actually start racking up a pretty significant amount of damage without really trying too hard. But that's only if you can consistently enough apply her burn to stack up her debuff in the first place. So aim for the 67% initially, I would say. If you want to try and get away with less, then, you know,
Just consider the risks of
Yeah.
not having 100%, basically.
if you're shooting for the 67%, then that'll guarantee your skill always applies it. It won't guarantee that your basic attack always applies it, but it'll be high enough that you should be able to get away with just using basic attack to maintain the burn in most cases. And, you know, if it's looking like, oh, I'm not going to be able to refresh this in time, or I really need to refresh it this turn, well, then you have the 100% with your skill to fall back on in that case, which just makes it easier to use and less stressful, and less likely that you miss your window of opportunity. Because if Fire Kiss falls off, whew, it's going to take you a
It
fair
took a
bit.
while to stack it up again.
Yeah.
While her ultimate can't trigger it for extra stacks, it's still, you don't want to be stacking it up, because every stack you get is the stack you weren't benefiting from.
Yeah. It's like one turn delayed from the effect that you hope you're getting.
That just sounds like elation. Okay.
I mean,
Let's talk about her Eidolons. E1, slurping noodles during handstand. What the fuck is this lady doing? What are these names? Slurping noodles during handstand, brushing teeth while whistling, smashing boulder on chest, blocking pike with neck, swallowing sword to stomach, catching bullet with hands. Okay, well, I think she needs help.
Life expectancy is not high.
This sounds like a certain Mr. Guy video title. Each one of these. Okay, E1. When skill is used, there is a 100% base chance to reduce the attacked target enemy's effect res by 10% for 2 turns. Basically, what this means is that you'll have an easier time blending your debuffs.
Except it can also fail to apply.
Yeah. So first
The
you have to
irony.
land this debuff, and then you can worry less about landing your other debuffs. But
So
realistically,
primarily what
it's just like
this does is, if you can always land your skill, this makes it a lot easier to land your basic attack, basically. But you should not account for this when calculating how much effect hit rate you want on her, basically.
yeah. This I think the biggest benefit of E1 is that it is an additional debuff for the purposes of something like Good Night and Sleep Well.
For sure.
E2. Brushing teeth while whistling. When an enemy target is being burned, the damage multiplier of the burn status applied by her basic attacker skill increases by 40%. Basically more damage. Damage good.
Yeah, I've seen a few people be confused over what this actually does.
How you're
But
writing.
it basically adds 40% attack scaling to the burn if you apply the burn while the enemy is burning.
So, burn the enemy first to burn them more.
That's basically it, yeah.
Fire plus fire equals fire.
So, basically, you just go from first degree to second degree to third degree burns. Nothing to worry about. E3, smashing boulder on chest, is just levels for her skill and basic, which is nice. Again, damage. Damage
It's
is
just
damage.
damage.
Like, not
This one
really.
is literally just damage, yeah.
Yeah. E4, blocking pike with neck. Every time the burn status afflicted by Guinaifen causes damage, Guinaifen regenerates 2 energy. I am not entirely certain about her energy breakpoints, so I don't really know how effective this is. Soulfish, this seems like up your alley. Do you know if this is particularly valuable?
Not in single target that much. In multi-target it definitely can be, especially since her ultimate triggers her burn again. Though this only applies to her personal burn, so you can't like add Asta burn and expect more energy.
Mhm.
But in AoE it definitely can add up to a lot more energy.
Okay, so it's a situational bonus.
Yep.
Okay, and then E5, swallowing sword to stomach is ultimate and talent levels. Again, just damage. Like it's more scaling for your fire kiss and your ultimate. So it's good.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
up to 7.6% stun, which is it's just nice to have more damage.
Mhm.
Surprised.
Shocker.
E6 increases
Catching
the
bullet with hands.
catch these hands. Yeah, catch the vulnerability. It just increases the vulnerability cap by 1,
Mhm.
which is really great because now you can have up to 30.4% permanent vulnerability, which is it's a lot because vulnerability is a very good debuff.
There is a trend. Every single one of these is just damage, more damage. You want damage? Have damage.
Yeah, the fact that Fire Kiss on its own is already like in essence permanent as long as you don't fall asleep or let auto do some weird even in auto mode, honestly, you'll probably still maintain Fire Kiss indefinitely. And at base, at E0, 21% damage vulnerability forever for everybody to benefit from. And if you go to E6, it's 30%. That's not. It's just nuts. It's just insane. It's
literally
ridiculous.
free.
And this is what Sushou was talking about when he said she fills a similar niche to Pela. While vulnerability isn't as good as defense shed, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's not exponential, but it's multiplicative with damage percent, which is the most common buff or attack damage percent. Being multiplicative with that means it's better than those buffs straight up if you have a fair amount of those already. So it's
Mhm.
just really nice.
And it is its own separate thing in the damage formula, is what Soulfish is saying.
Yeah, it's
Also,
super good.
we also didn't talk about her technique, but it's also just random, so it's I guess it's not that relevant to talk about.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's like if you don't have anything else to start the fight with, anything more important to start the fight with, then this can be pretty good because you can essentially start the fight with
If you get lucky.
Yeah, if you get lucky, you can essentially have the fight start with like one of the two elites or whatever, just having 3 stacks of Fire Kiss on them immediately, or 4 if you're really lucky and at E6.
Just
Don't
not
bank on it.
reliable enough, yeah. Just burn the enemies. That's better, anyways.
Yeah,
Burn,
and
baby, burn.
it's super easy to do. It's so easy to do, and it's so reliable. Like, it's basically after the first enemy turn, with just Guinaifen and no other characters. Like, upon the first enemy turn, they already have 2 stacks of Fire Kiss, and on the next one, they'll it's over for them from that point on.
Okay. I think that's all for her kit. Let's talk about her light cones. Okay. What light cone should we start with? Let's go for Patience, since she's basically mini KAFKA but fire and not as attractive.
All right, bro.
No, you cannot tell me that Guinaifen is anywhere close to KAFKA in terms of attractiveness. You are absolutely out of your mind. There is no way. This is Mother. She is just supreme, okay? She is S tier attractive. Guinaifen is pretty. She is pretty. She is very pretty, but I would take KAFKA any day of the week.
I like
Patient.
redheads.
That sounds like a personal problem. Also, enjoy it while it lasts. Literally dying. No. It's because red hair is recessive. Like, it is literally a dying breed.
Well, then I'm gonna enjoy her even more while she's still with us.
Anyway,
Patience.
yeah, patience is all you need, and in Sushou's case, he needs better taste. Spiderweb increases damage dealt by the wearer by 24% after every attack launched by wearer. Their speed increases by 4.8%, stacking up to 3 times. If the wearer hits an enemy target that is not affected by erode, there is 100% base chance to inflict erode to the target. Enemies afflicted with erode are also considered to be shocked and will receive lightning DOT at the start of each turn, equal to 60% of the wearer's attack, lasting for 1 turn. Okay, basically this second half of the passive is not something you care too much about, unless KAFKA's there, and if she is, why is Patience not on her? So yeah, increases damage dealt by 24% and gives you a stacking speed buff. It's fine. It's okay. Again, damage is good, but you need to worry about landing her things first before you can think about their damage.
It's also important that she's not KAFKA. Her skill does not trigger burns, so the speed has less value on her compared to KAFKA. So
Yeah.
you're primarily just benefiting from the damage percent here.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. So this is not really something that you should be putting on your Gwen. Incessant Rain. Okay, so Incessant Rain is more valuable because it gives you effect hit rate, right? Just right off the bat. Effect hit rate is good. Now, the problem is crit. Just crit. DOT, crit, not good. Does nothing. You cannot crit on your DOTs. Now, the Ether Code can maybe be something to consider. But at the end of the day, if you have this, you can use it. But it's not something you should go out of your way to pull for Gwen. Solitary Healing, the Herta Light Cone. So this is, again, it lacks effect hit rate, it has break effect instead, and like we talked about, break effect for burn, or like burn as a break effect is not the greatest. It's fine upfront damage, but DOT is lacking. And for the energy, if I recall correctly, she has to be the one defeating to get the energy back.
No,
No.
it's only she has to apply the damage over time, and as long as they die with it on.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So she still gets energy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad, but it's also not the greatest.
Yeah. In the name of the world, effect hit rate, but only on skill, which is still better than nothing. And I mean, like, it's a good stat stick. You're benefiting from
It's
all of
damage
it.
percent.
Yeah.
But the attack is the least valuable part of this because the burn does not do damage during her skill.
Mhm. So if you have it, it's an option, but don't like specifically level and go out of your way for this if you have other options. Now for the options that actually matter. Let's start with before the tutorial mission starts. So if you have tutorial, you should have it at S5. I don't know what you were doing if you don't have it at S5. It immediately gives you the large chunk of the effect hit rate that you need. You get 40% from it. You get 10% from your traces, so that's already 50%. Like Sushou was saying, you need about 67%. So if you're running something like Pan-Galactic, you're getting more from there. So you have pretty much reached your effect hit rate requirement. Now, the energy on defense reduced enemies, you could probably have this if you're running Pela, but that will depend on the team, because Gwen herself doesn't apply defense shred.
Yeah, this is a Lycon which is like it's good if you have it and you have nothing else. This really was just kind of designed for Pela and Silverwolf since they actually apply defense reduction to enemies and therefore will consistently benefit themselves from the energy refund. Gwen would need one of those two to also be on the team. And like you can do
Or
that for
Pearl.
sure, but if they're on the team, just give them this light cone. Like
Yeah. Like the other thing is if you have Pearl, but again, you're gonna need another Nihility character to have Pearl, and like which Nihility character are you running that's going to run this that isn't Pela and Silverwolf? So the two recommended options realistically are Good Night and Sleep Well, which she can very easily stack, because her different debuffs, her burn, her fire kiss, etc., they all count as individual debuffs, so they all contribute to the stacks on this. And you are getting a ridiculous amount of damage percent from the Slight Cone. It is not funny. The Slight Cone is stupidly strong.
Yeah. At E0, Gwen can facilitate 2 of the stacks permanently by herself, which is very, very good. And as soon as there's like a break dot or literally any debuff from any other character, that's the third one.
Yeah. Can third.
If you have E1, then obviously Gwen can facilitate all 3 stacks by herself, which is like, yeah, sure. Let me just take this absurd amount of damage percent and be like, yeah, I'll take your 72% permanent damage at S5. Good meme.
Yep. So Good Night and Sleep Well, very good option. But then again, like this is the damage option. This is what you look for if you already have your effect hit rate met. If you don't have your effect hit rate met, you take a look at Eyes of the Prey. Now, Eyes of the Prey, it's the good generalist, like all rounder, right? It gives you effect hit rate and it increases your DOT, which is fantastic because all of her damage is DOT, right? So S1, it gives you 20% effect hit rate and 24% DOT damage, scaling up to 40 and 48% respectively. If you have S5 of this, or like realistically, if you have this, this is probably what you want to run on Gwen. Because again, it gives you everything that you need, and it's just it's a pretty good option for her. Soul, do you want to add anything?
Not for this light cone. It's basically Eyes of the Prey and Good Night Sleep Well for like if you care about her damage, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Which you should.
Yeah, but there are support options like Rain, of course, that you can consider.
Mm-hmm. But again, like Rain is a 5-star and it's a gacha exclusive.
Yeah, but we probably should touch on like what's it called? Resolution.
Oh yeah, we will. Resolution is the next gacha exclusive option. As you know, if it lets you apply defense shred, basically. Just it's defense shred, the light cone. Obviously, it's not going to be as much as Pela and Silverwolf can apply, but it really doesn't matter. The more defense shred you have, the better. That's how the stat works. The more you stack it, the better it gets. You can go ahead.
And it's also important to note that while she doesn't have defense threat herself, it's also more valuable to have than, say, the debuff from Incessant Rain, assuming you don't need the affected trait, because vulnerability, unlike defense, is additive with itself, which means it does dilute its own value due to Fire Kiss, which means what this gains value then, especially if you have it superimposed.
But again, if you already have the effector rate that you need. If you don't, then you have to worry about the effector rate. Like again, prioritize getting the effector rate that you need to apply your various debuffs and DOTs, and then worry about her damage.
Yeah. The other thing about resolution is that you'll end up sacrificing quite a significant amount of Gwen's own damage output for slightly higher, or to raise your team's damage even more because of the defense shred and the fire kiss together. Thing is, it actually might not be worth going for, because Gwen's personal damage can actually be very significant, and lowering it to improve your team's damage is not actually always a favorable trade-off. So this is not something that this isn't like an obvious choice, quote unquote, like it would be for somebody like, you know, Pela or Silverwolf, who you just slap the sun and it's like defense shred. It's amazing. More of it, better. 16% at S5 for Gwen, and losing out on the benefits of either Eyes of Prey with the huge dot increase, or Good Night and Sleep Well, which is just the huge everything increase. It's something that you should check for yourself first if you have the choice between these three light cones, to see whether or not it's actually better for you.
For sure. It's definitely a consideration, but often falls behind when you have Gwen actually invested.
Yeah. Some of these 4 stars will be mentioned again when we talk about relics, because they are kind of also integral to the discussion about that. But we still have 3 stars to go through, so
yeah.
there
We
really
also
not
have we have Fermata. So
oh yeah,
Fermata is like, you are getting such little value out of this.
KAFKA.team.
it's just pain, just actual pain.
Like, you're getting break effect, which again is not something you particularly care about, and to get the increased damage is like the increased damage is only on shock or wind shear. So like it's just
They have to be affected.
Yeah, they have
by
to be affected by shock or wind shear. Now, like
KAFKA exists, but Gwen is not the wind or lightning character.
yeah. I mean, there's just like as nice as this is, you know, like guys, Shower KAFKA, we get it. It's tasty. But like, come on, just don't run this. Just don't run this, please.
This is an option for if your exclusive use case for Guinaifen is going to be in a KAFKA team, in which case, okay, sure, you can do that. The funny part about that is that it's still worse than Eyes of Prey or Good Night and Sleep Well, and not by a small amount. So there's really no reason you should ever be using this if you have alternatives.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it's free. You can get it from weekly bosses.
And
It
you can
means
buy it.
it is more accessible, technically speaking. So
Yeah, this is the absolute bare minimum of free to play. Like, just I mean, like, do I dare say it? Do I say it? Go solitary healing. If you don't have any other option, just go solitary healing.
might
Oh.
actually just be better. Yeah.
I mean, at least you're
it
getting
has higher
stuff.
base attack.
Yeah, and you're getting the energy and the DOT after ulting. Like, you're still
There is
getting something.
no reason for Fermata on this character.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Oh.
But it exists, and that's about it, I guess.
I forgot it existed, so that should really tell you everything.
Mm-hmm. We will meet again. No,
Please don't.
no. Just if you got this, I am sorry.
If you this damage can crit. She doesn't crit. If it doesn't crit, it doesn't do very much damage. You can see the problem here.
This is the weirdest like con in the game. Like it's
Who is this for?
E6 Silver Wolf.
No.
okay, but this would have unironically been pretty decent for like Topaz if it were a hunt like cone.
Actually true.
But it's just basic or skill.
Well, yeah, but like she hits 7 times on her skill, so you're triggering that.
Yeah, but it only triggers once per attack.
I thought it triggered on every hit. Wow, that's even worse.
Never mind.
Holy shit, it's
Back
so
in the bin.
bad. It's so bad. Okay, 3 stars. Let's get the cope out of the way. Okay, Void.
Well,
Effect.
Void.
Effect hit rate for 3 turns. It's effect hit rate, so it's still useful. For 3 turns, it's not very long, but if you're coping, I guess.
Void is unironically better than Fermata for the purposes that you're probably using Gwen for.
I mean, 40% effect hit rate, that's most of your needs for
3 turns.
enough turns to stack it up.
Yeah.
And that
Even if
means
you're really low on effect hit rate.
3 turns? That means 6 turns of debuffs at least, so at least that's something.
If you're not killing them within that time, then you have bigger issues, I think. But like,
yeah. But you have issues if you're using Void.
yes,
Yeah, if you're using Void, there is something deeply, fundamentally wrong that we need to take a look at. Loop. If you
can't make use of it.
If you have Welt on the team, I guess, but like,
you shouldn't be using them together anyway.
And then Hidden Shadow.
There's diminishing returns from the damage vulnerability that they both apply, and like it's fine. You can use them together, but you should be aware that it's.
I'm not even gonna talk about Hidden Shadow. Anyway, Relics. Let's go. Okay, Planars. Pan Cosmic Commercial Enterprise. Very nice, very tasty. You get 10% effect hit rate, and then you get attack based on your effect hit rate. 2 of the things that she really, really wants. Now, the only problem with this is that you have to farm it, or well, craft it, I guess. But this is a good option for her. Just it's a really good option for her Planars.
World 5 Troll Despair.
Wildfire, Troll Despair.
Yeah. And speaking of... Yep, go on.
Pancosmic is likely to be her like probably her best planar for the purposes of actually, well, not even just for the purpose of dealing damage. Just the effect hit rate is so valuable on its own, but the fact that it also increases attack, like this just helps you do all the things that you want to be doing. I guess the end game goal is to be able to use something like Fleet of the Ageless with her. But like, good luck getting that amount of effect hit rate and not losing out on like all of your attack. So, yeah, don't know about that one. Pancosmic,
Honestly,
very good.
I would say still stick to Pancosmic because you're getting 8% all allies attack, which is like it's fine, but like it's still 2 subs.
In dot teams, often like all 4 members will run fleet, so it's 24 or 32% team wide, I guess. So but the issue
Yeah.
is often just because Gwen wants a lot of stats, so
Mhm.
you can't often give up the effect hit rate even if the attack is lower than say fleet or space ceiling.
Yeah, it'll end up being more efficient for you and your team, ironically enough, to make sure that Gwen has all the stats that she needs so that she can do her job and benefit everybody else.
Speaking of space ceiling, this is another option that you can run if you already have your effect hit rate. It's 24% attack. It's the damage stat that she wants. Not much else to say there. And reaching 120 speed is very easy. It's not difficult at all.
She actually has above average speed too at 106. So
you
percentage speed buffs are also gonna make it like really easy to get to that.
which is something that we will get to in a second. But yeah, I mean, like, you're not running any of the others, right? Like, you're obviously not running the crit ones because crit.
What? Crit?
Yeah. You're not running Talia because, 1, why would you ever run Talia? And 2, break effect, Kek L. Broken Keel, again, also crit, but like crit for allies, so maybe. But just not on Gwen. Just don't put this on Gwen. Just don't. And then the others, again, we already covered Fleet. Sprightly Von Whack, if you want her to go immediately for some reason. Or if you need the ER. I don't know about her breakpoints, again.
It doesn't actually need ER to reach most her breakpoints.
Oh, okay, so Von Whack is
Because
Von Quack.
Like, Von Whack pairs funnily with her A4 that you get 65% immediate advance, but like, what does this actually do?
Yeah, what do you do? What do you do with this? What is this? How does this help you in any way?
Yeah.
Like,
if you're doing this to be like, oh, I'm gonna have 65% turn advance at the very beginning of the fight, that decaying shadow won't know what hits it. Like, no, it's still gonna be faster than you, bro. You're not gonna outspeed them. You're still gonna get hit first. It doesn't help you in any way, and it's like this could have been Pancosmic. In addition to getting imprisoned, anyway, it could have been Pancosmic too. Kek L, don't do it.
So yeah, realistically, Pancosmic, or if you already have the EHR somehow, Space Ceiling. But realistically, Pancosmic.
Yeah.
Because her energy breakpoints is, she doesn't necessarily care too much for them. While triggering the burns again is nice, you don't get additional utility most of the time off it. Where most characters who care about ER get extra benefit from their ultimates.
Yeah, I mean, it's
literally just damage once you have 3-4 stacks, which is not enough damage to sacrifice your set for.
Plus, her energy cost is standard at 120. It's not like it's super high or anything. It's pretty easy to maintain, and it's like a round number that doesn't noticeably get improved uptime from energy regen.
Yep. So
Yeah.
Pan-Cosmic. Pan-Cosmic, good. Okay, now,
Yeah.
Relics. I am going to get this out of the way. Genius. Geniusing. Next. We're not talking about genius more than that. I'm not. I'm not. Honestly, if you want to hear more about genius, just go listen to the KAFKA podcast.
True. We talked about it for like half an hour.
You were gonna say something, Soulfish?
Not really about genius, because what else can be said? It's genius.
Yeah.
Literally in the name.
Yeah. Sushou mentioned this earlier, but percent speed is nice on her because she has higher base speed. So something like 4-piece Musketeer would give her attack percent and speed. Very nice. Could also just do 2-piece Musketeer and 2-piece, not this one, Messenger. Don't do 4-piece Messenger. Don't.
She can't trigger it. It's...
Yeah.
It's useless.
The other thing you can do is you can do something like Messenger or Musketeer and like Guard if survivability is a concern. You will be trading off some offensive stats for survivability, but you know, like being alive is good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
2-piece fire can be considered if you have pieces of that.
Yeah. If you happen to be farming for top ass and you know you got some pieces lying around.
Why would you be farming this for Topaz?
2-piece.
I'm not going to say anything.
Listen. I need the mental release of farming something that isn't Genies of Brilliant Stars. I have been farming this for like the last 3 patches. I am tired.
It never ends.
At this rate, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to see Genius staring at me. Staring at
But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel
like Genius farming
you've
time?
been
Yes.
Here before. It's all genius. I'm sorry to say. 4-piece Musketeers is pretty decent on Gwen as well because you are actually likely to be using basic attack on her. And so
It's
having
not-
the 10% boost is
It's
nice.
not a lot damage, but it's just 3 damage. Why not take it?
Yeah.
Damage is damage.
Yeah. And like realistically, you know, if you're doing your bosses and stuff, you're gonna have a bunch of Musketeer pieces lying around, and you only need to like worry about attack and effect hit rate. So
Maybe.
maybe. But I'm just saying, like, you're not gonna need to crit hunt. So
Yeah, that's true.
No, you're gonna need to hunt for other things.
it's fine. Just
Effect hit
run
rate.
run Eyes of the Prey and get all of the effect hit rate you need from that, and Pan-Cosmic, and you're done. Problem solved. At that point, you literally need what, like 2 subs?
7% is around 2 subs, yeah.
So, yeah, you're fine.
Like, realistically, you often just need less too, because only like 4 or 5 enemies have 40% effect resistance.
Yeah. So, like, the 67% is what you need at, like, the absolute, really.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the worst case, but it's still a good goal to have.
Yep. Don't run Thief.
Sure.
Do not break effect. Just don't. Bad. Who even uses the set?
No one.
No one anymore after the artifacts or relic changes they've done.
Rip Serval. Break
Yep.
effect Serval. Anyway. Yeah, so that's Relics, Light Cones, Synergies. Okay, first off, let's get this out of the way. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but KAFKA is mommy. I mean, what? So, KAFKA and DOT characters, I don't really think this requires too much discussion. KAFKA likes DOTs. Gwen is good DOT, good debuffs. She does her own damage. Fantastic. Any additions?
Also, KAFKA can also trigger burns, which makes Fire Kiss stack faster too.
Okay. So, yeah.
But there's not much to say about this. It's a pretty obvious pairing.
Yeah. Literally the logic of any other DOT character with KAFKA, just apply it to Gwen. Maybe better? Question mark? Okay. Other Nihility characters. Silverwolf and Pela, defense shred, good.
Yeah.
There are some minor things, or, well, somewhat minor things to take into consideration. Like Pela gives you effect hit rate, just from being on the team, which contributes to your EHR requirements. So that is something to keep in mind. AoE defense shred, good. Silverwolf, again, classic. Implant, good. Defense shred, good. Though she is single target, again, so just keep that in mind. I don't think there's anything else to add for those two.
Not really, because none of them overlap with her in terms of their base kits.
What about Sampo and Luca? Do you ever want to
Those
run?
do overlap.
Yeah, do you ever want to run double DOT outside of a KAFKA team? So just Gwen and Sampo. KAFKA is not on the team.
Probably not.
Can work, but it's like it's not the greatest without KAFKA.
KAFKA is the glue that holds DOT teams together.
Well,
It definitely makes them a lot better, but like it can work, but
it's not terrible, and I think that's probably the highest praise we can give.
because enemies often don't have overlapping weaknesses either, so running them mixed without like extra synergy isn't great synergy just between themselves, just because they both all apply dots.
There are some particular enemies of note that have both fire and wind weaknesses, and the fact that Gwen has so much consistent toughness damage in AoE scenarios, and Sampo's bounce skill can annihilate the toughness gauge of a single enemy. So think Decaying Shadow, that has a fire and wind weakness. Think Malefic Ape, fire and wind. Then you've got, Svarog has fire and wind. That could actually be pretty important. And Ice Out of Space has fire and wind.
Definitely comes up, but it's not like it's not something you can rely on basically.
Yeah.
Once they're not weak to it, their
It's
damage
over.
is significantly hampered by that.
Yeah. It's kind of not amazing. Even though Sampo's actual wind shear is a little bit of a higher multiplier compared to Gwen's burn, he needs to stack it up, which takes time, depending on how unlucky you are. And he also can't force proc it like Gwen can with her ultimate, so still ends up dealing less damage. And his ultimate's dot vulnerability is of the same type as Guinaifen's Fire Kiss. So, but it only works for dot, so it's also worse in that regard, even if it's technically a higher debuff.
Also, uptime is It exists, I guess.
It exists. Yeah, his uptime with his debuff is quite subpar by comparison. So outside of a KAFKA team, having the two of them feels unnecessary at the best of times and suboptimal at every other time, pretty much. And that goes even more so for Luca because it's the same issues, but in single target now as the additional limitation. So
Lucas buff is also actually weaker, or
no, yeah, it
some-
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just 20%.
I don't know him. I've never met this guy in my life.
Primarily, the advantage over Sampo is that it applies to all damage, but well,
You're
does
already
too.
doing that, yeah.
Mm.
So
Guinaifen,
There's-
best Nihility character? Poggers?
Keiko, I'm not accused of clickbait.
That's clickbait. This is objective factoids. Okay. Let's talk about the last Nihility character, Welt, and just no. So Sushou already covered this earlier. The damage vulnerability is an issue, but there's also the fact that Welt slows the enemies, and that's inherently anti-synergistic with DOTs because you want enemies to take their turns so that they get hit.
Ignoring the fact that he's also imprisoned can just yeet them into the Shadow Realm as well.
Yeah. Me when the enemy has like a 300 marker on their action order.
I don't think
Oh,
I don't
love
actually
Welt.
think it's super terrible because it also means that if enemies are yeeted, there's no possible way for their fire kiss to run out. And the fact that, yes, it's diminishing returns on the damage vulnerability,
But-
he's a damage dealer, so it kind of matters a little less because you can make up the difference with a third character who's just buffing Welt. And especially if Welt has, depending on what Welt's light cone is, if he's using Good Night Sleep well and he's paired with Guinaifen, like
That is a lot of damage, yeah.
that's a lot of damage.
If it is, if you yeet them, you're not actually getting 3 stacks until like a billion coin turns 2. So
Yeah, you get to keep that forever, pretty much. And because Gwen has her ultimate to force proc the burn, you will still end up getting all of your stacks of Fire Kiss.
eventually,
It'll take a little while, but you will get them, and the enemy, the enemy is going to be busy having tea with Mr. Tumnus while you beat them up.
but yeah, it's not the
Mr.
worst idea.
Tumnus? You boomer! You
Yeah.
boomer!
Hey, don't tempt me. I'll start singing Backstreet Boys.
It's
Okay.
not something that we would like recommend the most time, but it does work if you really wanted to, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm. And
you
hey,
can. but
you
why?
could you could maybe run like Welt, Guinaifen, Pela and benefit both of them.
Yeah.
Of course.
Especially
So.
if the enemy's ice weak.
Mm.
They're never moving.
Oh no. But yeah, I mean, is there really anything else in particular to talk about? Like Harmony, Asta attack and speed, fantastic. Tingyun attack, alt, more damage. Bronya, I mean,
She works with everything else just because damage vulnerability is such a rare generalist like debuff. So far, the other versions of damage vulnerability that we've had outside of Welt's ultimate have either been gated behind only applying to specific damage, like Sampo's ultimate for dots, or being exclusively single target, like Luca's ultimate. and Welt's is also tied to his ultimate. Gwen's is tied to her basic, really, and so she doesn't have that limitation at all. And
it doesn't even need to be her burn.
it doesn't even need to be her burn. She just needs to be in the team when it happens. And because damage vulnerability is a different part of the damage formula, you can put her with pretty much any other support, and she's always going to be providing maximum value relative to like other things, because there's nothing to stack diminishingly with. It's just here's 21% more damage. You're welcome.
Oh, I was more talking about like buffing Gwen.
Oh, buffing Gwen. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, okay. In the event that you would that your Gwen is very well invested, you've reached the pinnacle of Gwen. Your time investment and resource investment has finally paid off, and you want to hypercarry Gwen. Well, I genuinely think you kind of can, especially because Good Night Sleep Well exists, and it's so much damage. And it's the same thing. Like the buffs that she provides through her debuff to her allies, she also benefits from them. So if Bronya is turn advancing her with her skill, she gets the damage percent from that. She gets the attack percent from Bronya's ultimate. That's gonna add up very quickly. Yeah, okay, the crit damage is a bit. We don't talk about that part. But Asta is really great to just pair in general with Gwen. Like those two, and then build a team around them. You have the attack percent from Asta, the speed boost from Asta, and Gwen will also be benefiting from Asta's A4. So she'll have 18% more fire damage because, of course, she does. Why not? Memes.
This is more value in every single way than 4-piece Firesmith. This A4. It is a higher number. It is permanent. It is unconditional. It doesn't require you to farm for it. I mean, well, technically it does, but you're getting it anyway.
It's so good.
And then you have Firesmith. I'm not gonna shit on Firesmith anymore today. Just
you've run the allowance dry.
This is going to end up turning into a fuck Firesmith 4-piece stream.
I mean, we did get 2 new fire characters, and neither even.
No one wants it. No one wants it. It's so bad. Oh.
Gwen with Tingyan can be quite good because, again, this is still assuming that you're doing Gwen as a hyper carry. Yeah, more forced procs of her dot, very nice. The damage percent will also benefit that. The attack percent will heavily benefit that. And because you're building attack percent anyway, you have probably more attack percent than other damage dealing characters, which means Tingyan also benefits from this. And it's a very good kind of symbiotic relationship. Yukong, the crit buffs are entirely wasted. It's the same deal as with other dot characters. But if Gwen is there, if Gwen and Yukong are there for a primary damage dealer, then that combination can also be very, very impressive. Because imagine like tearing into an enemy with all of Yukong's buffs, and then Gwen's debuff as well. Yeah, it's she is. You can put her anywhere. You can literally put her anywhere, and I'm sorry to say, but she is probably better than Hook and Himeko, even as a hyper carry.
But I still don't think you would really Bronya skill her, because her skill at level 10 is 120% attack scaling, which is not like the highest hyper scaling.
Yeah, true. Yeah, Bronya might be a bit troll for hypercarry Gwen, but just do Ting and Asta. It'll be fine.
Asta
Probably
is
the
just
biggest downside.
stonks right now.
The biggest downside of Gwen is how much investment she demands, really.
Yeah, especially relative to things like Pela, Asta, who just slap defensive stats on them, and maybe a bit of effect hit rate on Pela, and then you have a character.
Yeah. It's definitely very worth the investment for Gwen because she can rival the support characters that we already have, and sometimes, maybe depending on how good yours is, exceed that. Having a character that can actually fully utilize the types of Nihility light cones that we have, especially like Good Night and Sleep Well, is one of those light cones where it's like, if only there was a character that could use this insane light cone. Well, now there is, and it's very, very good. Depending on how you go about your relics as well, I think probably Eyes of Prey is the most recommended light cone for her, just because it sorts the EHR issue quite early, or at the very least gives you enough of a head start if it's like S1 or low superimpositions. Gives you enough of a head start to get enough EHR without sacrificing too much attack. If you're just God Gamer or Cosmic Luck, if Aha the Elation smiles on you and you get enough EHR through just substats, and you can go for like attack body and still go for like Good Night Sleep Well, then I think you just win the game. And that's like the pinnacle goal for Gwen. But yeah, you can, as long as you have like one of those two light cones, I think Good Night Sleep Well or Eyes of Prey, like go for whatever stats you need on your relics. Aim for, like, how much did we even say an attack value to aim for? As much as you can get, I would say, and laugh as the world burns.
Okay, well, I think that wraps it up, honestly. I don't think there are any other notable synergies to talk about, or anti-synergies.
No, not really. She's everywhere, every with everyone, pretty much.
Yep. She has the versatility of Pela, but with more height, and probably more. I'm not gonna finish that sentence. Anyway.
Hook is technically a synergy. Who can use Warface Smith? Exactly. Who?
Ah, yes, you mean Red from the small indie hit series Pocket Monsters.
Careful, Nintendo might be listening.
Oh no, the snipers are at my door. They suck at their job. Why are they at my door?
How many Finnish snipers are in this image?
Yes.
I
Okay.
am cancelled by Nintendo.
I think... Oh no. KQM versus Nintendo. That would be funny. Okay, I think we can now go into the Q&A section. This is also the part where we will be answering your questions about Seele. So, Seele does not get... She doesn't get a dedicated slot because Seele. What was that?
Did we talk about main stats? Because I don't feel like we did.
Yeah, we said attack, EHR if you need it, and speed boots.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just blind because I can't see it. The dialogue.
It's fine.
It do be late.
It's fine.
Okay.
But yeah, to go over it again, go for attack where possible. Do not get crit body. If you get crit body, I will find you. Speed boots, fire balls, and attack rope.
I have
Balls.
lost my faith in Hunt. Oh no.
It's okay. I was never a fan of Hunt. I am destruction.
Destruction pilled.
Destruction incarnate, you mean? But yeah. So Q&A time. Between Zele and Humpy Numpy, who's better? What the fuck does that question even mean? In what regard?
It's hopeless. No.
There are a dozen ways to answer that question. You're going to have to refine it a little bit better. Also, in the meantime, while we do the Q&A, it's time for the giveaway. We'll be doing 2 Express Supply Pass giveaways for today. These giveaways are sponsored by our friends at Paimon's Bargains. They are a third-party service that provides you the best deals available for your in-game purchases. You can get basically anything that's in the shop from them. They utilize regional pricing differences to find you said good deals. And we've been using them for a long time now. Definitely go and check them out, especially if you're looking to pull any of these fancy 5 stars. They'll definitely help you. So, the rules of the giveaway are simple. You need to type something in chat. You need to make sure to have your Twitch whispers open, so I can DM you. And if you win and I DM you, I am going to need your Discord tag, your server, and your UID. Hold on, guys. Hold on. I haven't started the thing yet. Okay. Starting now, we'll be doing 2 giveaways. Just say something in the chat, literally anything, and you'll be immediately entered. I'll keep this up for a few minutes while we answer some questions.
The first thing that comes to mind, huh?
Yes.
Well, I would say neither is like strictly better than the other. 'Cause
Giga Chad Soulfish. Neither.
Hunt bad. GG go next.
Of course. But they have different focuses, work in different teams. Just both are good, but they're not directly comparable. Is what I would say, generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
valid. Right. Before I forget, we got a few follows while we were talking. Laziness Bum, Ziffy _V, DD the Shadow. Thank you very much for following. It is very
Hope you
appreciated.
enjoy your stay.
Eris bullying poor hunt monkeys. Hey, fuck the hunt. I will PvP lawn myself if I have to.
Local area network in danger. Everyone on Genius. There was a question here, I think. Oh, here.
Yeah. For DOT teams in general, is Pela better than an attack buffer like Asta, especially with Genius? That's not an easy question to answer.
That is not an easy question to answer. I'd say it depends on the exact setup of your dot team and what you're trying to achieve from it, because sometimes the speed buff from Asta, assuming that by dot team you specifically mean that you're using KAFKA, sometimes the speed buff from Asta can be more significant for KAFKA in the interest of force proccing the dots more frequently, especially if your KAFKA already has an unreasonable amount of speed. Because if your KAFKA has like by unreasonable, I mean like 150, 160 speed. If you're within that kind of range, then I would say Asta can actually be more useful because KAFKA gets so many turns once she goes above 200 with Asta's ultimate. But if an enemy has quantum weakness, then there is more of an argument for Pela because of how Defense Shred works and how it stacks with Genius, and the Genius gets an extra 10%. If it's against quantum weak foes, it gets so complicated. Bring both.
Okay, so, again, Guinaifen's preferred Lycons. Okay, so easy answer is you have really two options for 4 stars. Those are generally going to be her best options. You have Sampo's Face, Eyes of the Prey. This is her all-rounder. This gives you all of the stats you need. It gives you damage. Good. Now, if you already have the effect hit rate that you need somehow, and you don't need the added effect hit rate from Eyes of the Prey, good night and sleep well. Guinaifen at E0 can already meet the 2 of the 3 stack requirements. At E1, she can meet all 3. Now, this gives her the most raw damage by far. The more impositions you have, the more value you're getting out of this. Those are her 2 light cone recommendations. For Mata, terrible. Before the tutorial mission, if you have this, give it to Pela. Resolution, if you have this, give it to Pela or Silverwolf. 5 stars, not necessarily good. Just don't really go for these specifically. 3 stars, terrible. Just don't. So it's realistically either Good Night in Sleepwell or Eyes of the Prey. How important are constellations for Guinaifen? They're just more damage. They are not required at all. They just improve her damage. That's pretty much it.
Then there's a Clara question here.
Okay, hold on. Let me do the giveaway first. Okay, so
Alright.
I'm gonna pull the winners. Remember, keep your Twitch DMs open and reply in a timely manner, otherwise I will reroll. So, first win. Golden 801 underscore. Are you here? Reply immediately. Okay, there you are.
Gold was just in chat.
Okay, that's our first winner. Congratulations. Okay, next. Ozzy205. Are you here?
Congratulations.
Don't congratulate them yet. They have to be here first. Ozzy205. There you are. Okay, congratulations. Now you can be congratulated.
Congratulations! You're a winner!
You have won a prize. Congratulations.
A winner is you.
Okay,
Well,
and that is the giveaways for today. Remember, guys, if you didn't win today, there's always next time. We do these almost every stream. So, tune in next time for your chance to win a giveaway. And who knows? Maybe we'll do even bigger giveaways. These are all possible with your support. What do you mean we're not done? What? What is this?
We're not. We still have the Q&A. I mean, don't leave.
No. You're banned. Goodbye.
What?
Okay, there was a Clara question here. Okay, are Clara teams with Topaz significantly better than other options? It depends. Yeah, Ozzy, I got your message. Don't worry.
For example, if you mean compared to other options with follow-ups we currently have, the answer is generally yes, because her ultimate attacks are blast attacks, so, which means it can splash onto the marked targets while March can only hit once a single target, which means you can realistically only get one advance every like enemy cycle. Well, Clara, if you're lucky, you can get 3. So, but is Clara the best option to slot in a team? That really depends. It's really hard to say because that depends on so many things.
Golden801, please reply. Is Guinaifen better than Sampo in a KAFKA Asta team? Well, I mean, it really depends.
I would maybe say I would be more on the side of probably, just
Yeah.
because Asta will benefit Gwen, who will benefit Kafka. And having the higher uptime on vulnerability compared to Sampo, even though Sampo's dot vulnerability is technically higher, it is going to even that out a fair bit. So, like enemy weakness, I guess, to an extent. But if you're playing that kind of team to begin with, you probably don't care unless the enemy is like immune to shock or immune to burn.
Immune to shock and taking KAFKA.
I've seen weirder.
Reaper saying Sampo got the DOT vulnerability. Well, Guinaifen has the better vulnerability.
Sampo, well, he has a higher buff potentially. It's also duration limited. Like 50% uptime is already good for him, which means like average uptime is not actually, or average buff, I guess, is not necessarily even more. Like if you can concentrate your damage into his window, of course that might be better, but that also relies on you having his ultimate when you want to do that. So
Yeah, it's not super ideal most of the time.
Also, before someone asks, no, Sele has not been power crept. She's not garbage tier. She's still good. She's still quantum. She's still fantastic. Just because the hype around her died and people have some misconceptions does not mean she's any worse than she already is.
Yep.
She is a
True.
good unit. She's a good DPS. If you like her, grab her.
Clara's blast damage from ultimate does trigger Numbi advance, and it's also follow-up damage that does get increased if the adjacent target is marked, but only for that target.
Is it worth it to roll for Sele Light Cone? It's a very very strong generalist light cone. Like we discussed way earlier when we were talking about Topaz light cones. In the Night is just good. Like it's a strong 5-star by default, but it also just works on anyone. So you can move it around quite freely and have it be in almost all cases at maximum effectiveness. So it's a strong option that will remain strong and isn't limited to just 1 or 2 characters.
Is Sele good as a sub DPS? No. She is way too selfish to even consider running as sub DPS.
Yes, you can run her as a sub DPS for Ching Shui. Just basic attack and give the skill points to Ching Shui. For legal reasons, this is a joke.
For legal reasons, I said that joke.
Sailor's viability leaving her body when Donhang released. She's trying to put in more DPS with Sailor is like cutting your team in two and trying to mash them together.
I love Jigsaw.
I mean, that's what you're going to be doing if you try that. QQ without skill points. I mean, just roll better tiles.
Yeah, just get lucky. What's wrong with you?
Fearless best team.
Sealy plus 2 damage amplifiers plus sustain. Though I mean, like realistically, if you're asking a serious question, then like something like Bronya, Silverwolf / Pela, and then a sustain option that can keep up.
Often Fuxian is preferred because her sustain is not tied to turns, because Seele murders turns.
Yeah. So shielders are going to be crying with her. Fushuan, and if you don't have Fushuan, Luocha, if you don't have Luocha, Lynx.
Bronya Tingen
Natasha.
versus Bronya Pela? It depends on
Bronya?
what you need.
Depends on which DPS.
No,
Do
they're
you
asking
even
for
have
Sele's
skill
best
points?
team. Sele's
Or
best
for
team.
Seele,
I'm gonna say Bronya Pela. I don't think there's much value in getting Tingen in there.
Bronya Tingen is one of the holdovers, I think, from the very, very early team building that existed in Star Rail in like 1.0. And it's a lot of... Seele already has a lot of intrinsic damage percent in her kit, so the damage percent provided by both Bronya and Tingen gets diluted a fair bit. You also just don't have the skill points really to maintain that, and because Seele is such a speed demon, Tingen is going to need to be refreshing her skills buff quite often. So that's not really a sustainable team to go for most of the time. You'll eventually need to start basic attacking with Seele, and at that point, why? It just Pele is probably better.
often better to have debuffer because those debuffs are tied to enemy turns instead of Seele.
Yeah. And like the other thing is, like realistically, the reason I take Pela there is because it's not likely for you to be dealing with pure single target a lot of the time. You are going to generally have to deal with like stupid ads, right? Like shitty mob summons. So having Pela's AoE defense shred on Seele in particular because of Resurgence can be incredibly valuable because it just makes killing those side ads a lot easier.
She is definitely suited to content where she can snipe ads too, so yeah, definitely adds value there.
Yeah. Because like
Yeah.
she's not pure single target like functionally. She's pseudo single target. Meaning she can deal with multi-target content, which is good for her. It means that she isn't as likely to be kicked out of the game. Especially because her damage is like already stupid high.
Yeah. Seele is the only hunt character who is currently able to circumvent
Being a hunt character.
Being a hunt character. The only other hunt character that comes close to being able to do that is Sushou, just because she can give herself a new turn, but it's not the same. Seele kind of runs away with it.
And Sushou is very like, in my opinion, she's very like physical weakness relegated, right? Like she melts through she melts through physical weakness really quickly, which helps her synergize with her E1. It's not a requirement, but I think that and the E1 itself is also just really important for her. Seele, on the other hand, doesn't really have that problem. No Eidolons for Seele are necessary. Realistically, her Eidolons aren't particularly good.
No, I mean we have somebody here who has.
Yeah,
Right.
like, I would say her E4 is actually her best Eidolon.
But
The
if
energy region one.
Yeah, actually.
I mean, I can see that her ultimate is really, really big.
Because even if you only get one kill, it guarantees you 3-turn ultimates. If you get 2 kills, you get two or 2-turn ultimates. So that is actually pretty nice. But the rest are whatever. E6 is often a 0% damage increase.
How much crit rate is required if I have E1 Seele and Fushuen? Do you mean and E1 Fushuen or just and Fushuen? I guess it doesn't matter because
just
you're asking about crit rate.
yeah.
I mean you still kind of want enough to be able to proc Rutilant, I feel.
Want enough visible to proc that, yeah, at least.
So you're still kind of looking at like 70% base. And like, okay, yeah, you'll probably. I mean, okay, if you have the 15% from her E1, and then like, what is Fushuan's 12?
12% at 10.
So 27% is what you'll get in addition to that. So you'll be 3% away from overcapping if you're exactly 70.
Which
But
you're
you
rarely
shouldn't
ever
be-
going to be.
Yeah, so
It's not
just
worth worrying about either, because missing crits when you're like, it's not you shouldn't worry about it. Primarily focus on activating Rutilant if you're using that, for an example.
yeah.
Now, my question is like, why? Like, do you have E1 but not S1? And why? Or if you're considering getting one or the other, I think go for S1 over E1. Because
E1
S1,
is not good.
yeah, like your S1, you're always benefiting from. It's just really good. E1, on the other hand, is like, eh.
I would basically say her E1 does not change how much crit rate you want on Seele. Because it's not a visible buff, and it's conditional as well.
Yeah. Conditional buffs are not something that you should explicitly plan around because, well, it's kind of in the name, it's conditional. And especially if something very, very important depends on that one condition, like for example, meeting Rutilant Arena's 70% crit rate requirement, or Salsato's 50% crit rate requirement, or whatever else, it's almost never worth it to gamble on that condition
It doesn't even
because,
help because it's not a visible buff.
yeah, it ain't good.
So basically, don't consider her E1 when you try to figure out how much crit rate you want, and at least have enough to trigger any relevant set bonuses you have. That I believe that should be the.
Yeah, I think that was the last question. Don't think there are any other questions. Any other questions in the chat? Chatto? It's okay, guys. It's okay. At least you're not the proud owner of an E3 Japard, an E1 Clara, and these abominations.
Those first two were actually like pretty good. E3 Japard, very nice. E1 Clara, very nice.
If
Time
I
Waits for
use
No
them.
One?
If I use
Okay, yeah,
them.
if you use them.
I
Please
wait.
use them. They're so good.
Look at what I have, though.
Oh, man.
Look at, I have her, I have him, and I have his husband. And I have her. I don't need more shit. Life is not deja vu. I am suffering. Genius good, Firesmith bad. End of story.
Yes.
How much
True.
crit damage is required on her to feel good? Buddy, as much as you can get while maintaining your other stats. That's not a question. There is no, like, recommendation for crit damage. Like, there's no breakpoint for it. You get
No
what you
magic
can
number
get.
that makes it feel better.
You get what you can get. Because with crit damage, it also depends on your other stats. It depends on your attack and your crit rate. There is no magic combination of recommendations that we can give you that's like, here, this will solve all of your problems in life.
Hit 500% and your enemies disappear.
Yeah.
Bro's asking us for subjective takes about how they feel. Excuse me? I'm not in your head.
I wanted Yanqing for so long, but he just refuses to come over, so.
Here, take one of mine.
Thank you. I will.
Destroy the child.
I will. Wait a second.
Well, will E2 Gwen be good without KAFKA? I mean, yeah. Why would it be bad?
She still debuffs the same amount.
It's more damage.
Yep.
You mean
Literally,
Jing Yuan at
her
home.
Eidolons are just more damage. Damage is damage. More damage is damage. Yanqing, you mean Jinglu at home? No. No. Don't insult Jinglu by saying that. She's a strong, independent swordswoman that was the champion of the Xianzhou Luofu. Yanqing is a brat.
I like how Yanqing is probably like stronger than 99% of everyone on the Luofu, but he just keeps going up against that 0.1%.
My dude went up against 4 of the 5 members of the High Cloud Quintet in the same day.
Went up against KAFKA and Blade together as well. Went up against us several times. My man just does not know how to pick his fights. Maybe he should know his place. Finally, someone says it. Yanqing will be better after his time skip.
This is a Honkai Impact reference.
When he becomes old, he gets older.
Dilf Yanqing.
Don't say, oh.
And me.
I'll never forgive him.
Fuck that guy. I understand why he did it, but fuck that guy.
It's funny how there are so many achievements involving beating Yanqing up. It's because they know.
It is literally entirely for the Honkai Impact players that have wanted to beat his ass for years.
I swear to God, they better not. They better not with they've already teased in dialogue about Marshall Hua. There's no way. Don't do it. And Mr. Tongue Twister of a name. Oi.
Why will the Welt meta start? Do you mean when will the Welt meta start? And if that is the question, then I have
did it
news for
stop?
you. Welt is very good. If you have Welt, use Welt.
Survive or be destroyed. There is no other option.
I'll use well.
E.
You press his abilities.
Yeah.
Like,
You build
There is-
damage on him and you kill things.
True.
there isn't like any specific way to play him. Just, I guess you could. There are some like intricacies with his ultimate, but those are
Like-
pretty niche.
What? Are they even worth mentioning? I mean, like, no, I don't think it matters. Just do the equivalent of holding W in like first-person games. Just press everything, and they will die. Send them to the Shadow Realm.
That is literally what his ult does. My
man's
man
is-
slicing through a black hole for aesthetic, for a pose. You can't mess with that. No,
He's currently also
hyper
the only
carry.
character that can force it, that can force imprison on enemies, as far as I can recall right now.
He's the only character that can make full use of the Wastelander set.
Oh god, yeah, true. The only character worth farming that accursed set for, and enduring the Firesmith drops.
Disparage.
Imaginary set, like the imaginary good pieces I have of that set.
Yeah, and on that note, I think we can wrap it up here for today.
Black hole into a just glasses true combo.
Okay,
Yep.
best 4-star for Welt, best 4-star Lightcon. Good night and sleep well. It's
Yeah,
generally one of
goodness
his
of-
best options. It's just good on him in general. Does he need any specific support to be played DPS? No, but he really likes
No.
Ting Yun and Pela. They're very nice on him. But he doesn't need them. No, Imbibitor can't make full use of Wastelander. Because he can't consistently imprison. So he's not going to get the second half of the passive, the 4-piece. When attacking debuffed enemies, the wearer's crit rate increases by 10%. This is very easy to get because you're realistically running him with Pela or Silverwolf. Now, this is the issue. And their crit damage increases by 20% against imprisoned enemies. The only person that can actually consistently utilize this is Welt, because he has Imprison on his ult. Other imaginary characters would need to to Imaginary Break to apply Imprison. 2-piece is better for IL, yes. But realistically, genius. You made me mention
Yeah.
genius again.
Does this character deal damage? Genius. Does this character want to not die? God. Hey, both of those can be farmed at the same time, I think.
They should have paired Genius with Firesmith if they knew what they've done.
Oh, do you want to hear a funny thing? Genius. The pairings used to be different.
Was Genius paired with Firesmith?
Yeah, I think it was. God was paired with Wastelander. They consciously changed it. And now there's no reason to leave.
Oh no.
Just put Genius on all the DPS. Buddy, where are you when I do my streams? Like, I could showcase every single one of my built characters and you would see one thing in common with them.
Like, actually same, I literally don't have other DPS sets.
I have like a couple of Musketeer sets from the weekly bosses. That's it.
I don't even have that, I literally only have Genius.
How much time until the MOC difficulty skyrockets? Ask Hoyo.
Probably when they remove dissociation from the current one.
True. Yeah, that's true.
I don't.
Dissociation makes what should be an absurdly unfair lineup into like a joke. As soon as dissociation is gone from this mock, like people are gonna suffer. Guarantee it.
Good. Which DPS is the worst to run Genius on, as in their best set makes the most difference? Welt, I think.
Welt, yeah,
Yeah,
he's
it
literally
should be
the only
Welt.
one. And it's only by virtue of Wastelander being even more statted out than Genius, as long as you can make use of like the second condition. That's it. That's the only reason.
But Welt is the only one who can consistently do that, so...
For now. Prage for Imprison support. Prage.
Imprison, Silver Wolf, except imaginary. Gold.
You should not be giving them ideas.
Ideas of things to avoid.
You really wish this world upon us? You really want this to be how it be? Do you want to see the endless amount of videos of, yo, the new must pull support? Question mark, exclamation mark, question mark? With a red arrow and a fucking ambiguous red circle somewhere?
Ambiguous, right?
We should actually just try that at one point. We just have the red circle and like a giant red arrow pointing to it, and then we just very casually hide Goku in the background somewhere and see if anyone notices.
Is it worth farming the defense set and ornaments? I think you mean Planars for Geopard. Yes. Invest in your Geopard. Well, depending on who you're pairing him with. Certain characters will just completely ignore the existence of his shield, and you'll feel sadness. But yeah, Geopard is good. If you have Geopard, invest in Geopard. Especially if you don't have Luocha or Fushuan or both.
Geopard provides unique value that those kind of don't. Having a shield to straight block damage can sometimes be much more impactful than what like Luocha provides, because you take the damage, but then you can immediately heal it off. You can't heal off death, and that's something that Geopard can actually like actively prevent, like Fushuan.
Yeah, it's basically proactive versus reactive utility.
We can't know until she releases.
Chance of Huohuosa planting Luocha. If that happens, I'm banning Sushou.
What the fuck?
If you have both Fushuan and Lynx, I don't really think you need to worry about Geopard. Like Sushou said, he is nice because he stops you from dying and taking damage in the first place. But Fushuan and Lynx are both fantastic options as it is.
Yeah.
But like, hypothetically speaking, even if that was the case, it doesn't mean Luocha wouldn't be able to stay in your team anymore for like magically just stop healing. That's not what happens.
Besides, Luocha already has like, I sincerely doubt that they'll be like, oh, here's another abundance healer who, consistently keeps your team top and can also dispel, like AoE dispel the entire enemy.
No. I think the bigger argument for Luocha never leaving is, in addition to the healing, to the stupid amount of healing that he does without using any skill points, it's the fact that dispels as well, or like cleanses. Sorry, not dispels. The cleanse.
Yeah, his emergency heal.
I think like the healing plus cleanse combo is so incredibly overpowered when you're talking about defensive utility that it'd be very, very hard for them to get rid of that. To just power creep him. If they power creep Luocha, I think the game might be breaking.
Yeah, there are a few characters that already exist where if certain things that they do get power crept in anyway, it's a sign that they are both running out of ideas and that the game is probably not long for the world. So they've managed to avoid that so far because they started out the gate like really strong with some really ridiculous characters. Like, we've already got some characters where it's like, there's surely no way that this can be improved upon in any way without it being just a direct power creep. But they've managed to skirt the line. They've managed to like release characters that are still like good and useful in their own regards, and don't immediately replace the characters we've had before. Like, I mean, Topaz is an example of this. She has her niche now, and she's good in it. She's not directly comparable to characters that came before her, and that's probably a good thing, honestly. So far I'm impressed. I hope they continue in this vein. And I would honestly rather they just bite the bullet on some characters, like in future if they need to, and just be like, we can't make this character better than an already existing character because it would be game breaking. So we're just gonna make them weaker. It's like, you know, sometimes you have to accept that fact. It's something that if you've been playing Genshin for any kind of a recent amount of time, you've probably noticed is that many of the 4 stars that have been released in Genshin kind of pale in comparison to the 4 stars that have been available since the very beginning.
And that's being nice.
That is being nice, yes. Genshin 4
Even
stars,
the good ones are so like okay, not the good ones because there are no good ones, but the better ones are so problematic. It's not even funny. Sarah, Queen of Goblins, thank you for the follow. Very much appreciated.
Even the 4 stars that came out later that are now good, like
Cookie.
Kuki Shinobu, she only became good because of the mistake that was Dendro. And now she's undeniably one of the best 4 stars in the game because of her interactions with that specific element, but it literally took creating an entirely new gameplay element for that to change. And surprise, surprise, the 4 stars that were already good before then are still good now, even in spite of Dendro. Some of them even got better because of Dendro. Like, you can't make this shit up.
Yeah, we stream fairly regularly. Some would argue she was balanced with Dendro in mind. Maybe. Maybe she was. But that's still not a good thing.
Yep. That is bad reasoning.
That is bad game design.
That's actually something that I think is maybe even worth mentioning as probably like the capstone to the stream, because otherwise we're just going to keep taking questions and it's going to be tomorrow before we know it.
It's already tomorrow for some people.
It's already tomorrow for some. Topaz is one of those characters where if you have the characters for her to use already and you know that you're going to make good use out of them, or you're going to make good use out of Topaz herself, then it's a character that you can probably get some good use out of and shouldn't feel bad for pulling. Maybe you're just pulling her for, you know, vain reasons, shall we say. That's fine too. I get it, you know? You do you. If you're pulling her because you're banking on the future and you're hoping that in future there will be the perfect follow-up character, or that there will be a sustained character like an abundance or harmony or, you know, preservation character that has follow-ups that can also trigger Topaz's things, and you don't have anything that works with her now, that's kind of bad logic in my eyes. You should maybe consider the possibility that just doesn't happen, you know? Because it is a very real possibility that it just doesn't happen, and you don't want to be sitting on a character that you're not already using in the vain hopes of like, oh, but maybe because you'll just end up with the Eula thing, You'll just end up with the no. This like surely they will release a dedicated support character for this character, and it's gonna be so good. It's gonna be amazing, and you're waiting for 2+ years, and then you finally get it, and it's shit. Don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, counting on future releases is never a good idea because you are at the mercy of the developer releasing. And they are always going to be chasing after the money. And this isn't even like a jab, right? Like, money is good. Everyone wants money. Everyone wants to stay in business. Everyone wants to afford things. Going after money is good. But that also means that if you like a less popular character, like Eula, that means you are going to realistically wait longer than the average character for a follow-up release. As evidenced by Eula getting Mika after years, Eula not having a rerun for years. Like, it's very risky.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's your decision.
It is your decision. But as the Trailblazer says, you know, when you have the chance to make a decision, make one that you know you won't regret. So, especially because this game works on real life money. Please be smart about your spending.
Like, okay, we're talking about Hoyo, the game that made Honkai Impact and Genshin. And even they have this little disclaimer in the store. Please play in moderation and spend rationally. They are telling you to pay attention to your spending. Anyway.
No. That's not to say that, you know, for Topaz specifically, that she doesn't have any chances at all. I mean, it's entirely likely that we will eventually get some more follow-up characters. It's just not clear when that will happen, and by the time that happens, there might be another Topaz rerun, so, you know.
The other thing that you need to consider is that it's also, like, there is also the consideration that, like, it's not just a certain archetype of character that you're looking at, you're also looking at their path as well, and possibly their element. There are multiple factors to consider in Star Rail when it comes to synergy. So, just waiting for the next X kind of character is very risky. This is something that you'd probably be very familiar with if you played Honkai Impact. It's very IDP. Lishmei, thank you for the follow. But yeah.
Yeah.
Post-op conversation versus shared feeling for links. I personally prefer shared feeling. I tried post-op, I was not a fan. But they're both good options. Use whichever has a higher superimposition. Okay, this is actually just the last question. Okay. I don't have Luocha or any other sustain at this moment. I currently have E1 S1 Sele and E0 S1 Dan Il. Should I still consider Topaz or go for Huo? Okay, so you say that you only have E2 links. Well, you have Natasha, like Soul said. Now, the thing you need to consider is that, okay, you need to stay alive to clear things. That's just a fact. This isn't Genshin where you can just dodge 5-head. You need to stay alive. So you need reliable sustain units. Now, Lynx and Natasha can be fine. Right? You just need to invest in them enough, and they'll get you to that point. But there is also the argument that maybe you're not happy with Natasha, right? Maybe she's just not doing enough for you. So at that point, maybe consider getting a better or more reliable sustain option. And the good thing about sustain options is that there are some that you can just get and not worry about replacing, right? Like we alluded to earlier, Luocha. Even if a better character comes along, Luocha is still going to be incredibly good. So you can just keep using Luocha. You don't have to pull another sustain option. Fushuan, same thing, right? But with DPSs, you still need to consider like synergies, you need to consider content, enemy immunity, weaknesses, all that. If you're happy with the DPSs that you have right now, then I would say go for sustain options. But if you really like Topaz, then go for Topaz. At the end of the day, this is a video game. So do what makes you happy. Do what brings you the most fun and the most joy. Okay? Because it's really not that complicated. It's a video game, just have fun.
Also, pulling for, like, say, Memory of Chaos, you're spending more Jades getting that character than you're earning from Memory of Chaos, generally speaking.
Yeah. You're getting 1,200 at most from Memory of Chaos every month. That's not even a 10 pull. So, if you want to keep 30 starring Memory of Chaos and, you know, flexing on the randoms every month, then go for it. If that's how you have fun, go for it. But don't feel pressured to pull characters for Memory of Chaos. Because Memory of Chaos is their shilling ground, right? It's where they advertise their characters. They make content tailored for those characters, with enemies specifically selected for those characters, blessings, etc. So just keep that in mind. Don't feel pressured. Just get to the point where you can comfortably do things and have fun, and then worry about what to pull after that. Okay, and on that note, we are actually going to call it here for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Catch us next time. We still do have that Quantum podcast episode for every single Quantum character that we're going to do at some point.
Every single Quantum character, including ones that are not actually Quantum.
What the fuck does that mean? I'm going to ban Soulfish. But yeah, that's all from us for today. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to Sushou and Soulfish for joining in and helping answer all of these questions and talking about these new characters. We'll see you guys for the next stream. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Take care.